Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Anybody that is. And we'll give it a few minutes here before we get anything serious going on. I got Joe and Kyle to hang out with. Chad is hanging out with his lovely wife tonight and won't be making it. Ironton Auditor said that he is uh, got strep throat, so he's sick. I haven't had a chance to message him back and say anything to him. Maybe he'll be here with us in a little bit. But in any case, we're going to get things going. And especially for those of you that are watching at a later date, if you could do me a favor, and I say favor because you haven't even seen the show yet, right? But do me a favor and hit the like button. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And if you like the show enough, do me a favor and hit the notifications so that whenever I set up a show or post one to YouTube, you'll get notified that I've done so. Hey, Jimmy Craft 2008. I'm guessing that I know you from my workplace. Is that right? So anyways, I'll get an answer from Mr. Jimmy Craft 2008 here soon. I have a feeling he's somebody I work with on a daily basis, so to speak. And if it's who I think he is, Kyle, me and you trained his parents in a CCW class over in a private class in Huntington. Is that right, Jimmy? Have I got the right Jimmy? Because if you know me much, Jimmy, you know I'm really bad at names. So let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Joe and Kyle. And there's Rebecca Joe. Thanks for being here. Sure appreciate it. And so I told Joe. So here's a little behind the scene. He says he's the right Jimmy. So do you remember that private CCW class we taught over in Huntington?
Yes.
Who, me?
No, Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Without naming the business or anything, Jimmy came to me and told me that he said, do you teach CCW classes? And I said, yeah. And he said, yep, my parents are in your class. He said, if I remember right, you can tell us in the chat, Jimmy, if I remember right, he said they said that they were the only ones out of that whole class that actually got their permits. So permitless carry passed it. Permitless carry passed, I think, not shortly after that. So that may be the reason. But
unless you're in the school zone.
Unless you're in a school zone, right? And then it doesn't count. So anyways, that's the Jimmy. And I know who we got here. And I appreciate you being here, Jimmy. I really do. And Rebecca Joe, thank you for being here as well. And let's see, Rebecca Joe. I'm going to wait a minute, hold on. Let me see if I can remember to do this right. No, I didn't do it right. I starred you. Wouldn't hurt. Anyways, I was going to click whatever it is I was supposed to do to add you as a moderator, but I forgot how to do that, how it is or what it is that I click. In any case, don't want to ramble here too much. So I figured we'd make this sort of a staple of the show, guys. We'll do an ATF check. So I was explaining to Joe before the show, Kyle. By the way, everyone, Joe is here in the house with me. He's in my kitchen with my whiskey collection, which is also his whiskey collection, because everything pretty much $80 and under I bought, and everything over that he bought. So it's his whiskey collection as well as mine, and it as a backstop. Now, Joe, I know you're not a great YouTube professional like I am, but you've got the pots and pans that are above the whiskey in the video. So you know, I don't know if you have the ability to get the pots and pans out of the frame or not. A little behind the scenes there, but in any case,
this is stuff you need to tell me before we go.
Yeah. Well, I just noticed it. I told you I'm a consummate professional. So in any case, so I figured we'd start calling it maybe Kyle, until and if I get monetized, we can talk about guns. So sort of the behind the scenes, what I've learned is that once you get monetized, of course, YouTube's AI does transcripts of every show. Everything everybody puts up now, there's an automatic transcript done of it with AI. And so then they just do a word search. And if the word gun's in there, they put you down, they reduce your ad views. So for now, though, doesn't hurt me. I'm not monetized. So I figured what we would do is we'd kind of go around. We'd talk about what we're guns. We'll just have to throw in guns and firearms like we got Tourette's or something.
Weapon.
So weapon. So, anyways, we'll do a little ATF check. So, I'm drinking some Restoration Rye right here tonight. And for those of you that know, that comes from Castle and Key down around Frankfort, Kentucky. Absolutely. Me and Joe went to the distillery tour there, and it was amazing. It was a really good time. So, beautiful place. This is actually batch number one of their rye. Let's see here. 3.5 years old before they did it, but ryes generally don't often. I won't say generally, but often don't age as well. So or as long. They don't need to be. So Joe, what are you partaking of there?
Well, I am drinking on some Yellowstone.
Ooh,
Yeah.
That's good stuff. A little trivia
nice.
there. Yellowstone was named after the park because they went into business sometime around when a lot of the parks are being set aside and all that. So they did it as kind of an honor to the park, but it's actually a Kentucky bourbon made in Kentucky. So what about you, Kyle? I know you showed us the Wheatley. Did you find out if it's a wheat bourbon or not?
It is. It is.
I mean, I'm sorry, a wheat vodka?
Starting with a proprietary wheat recipe. So yes, it is, and it's distilled by Buffalo Trace.
Interesting. So something else I learned by the process of becoming a whiskey instructor is that vodka can be made from anything. So if you took the exclusivity and inclusivity of definitions into account, technically speaking, bourbon is also a vodka because its definition allows it to be made pretty much any way out of anything. So pretty much any distilled spirit is also a vodka. We all think, most of us think that they have to be made from potatoes, but they don't. Pretty much anything. Lisa's chugging water. Hey, welcome, Lisa. Thanks for being here. So is that homemade water, or is that moonshine water, or did you purchase it through a reputable dealer there, Lisa? So anyways, you smoking anything, Kyle?
No,
so we did
sir.
the alcohol part of the ATF check. Now we're doing the tea. No? Okay. I know. Some of us have significant others that we have to put up with. I don't have that burden or blessing, whichever you want to call it.
She's in bed, or else she might chime in on that.
Right. So I've got a Tabac Dolce here tonight.
Nice.
She said that her water's out of the fridge door. The fridge door. I don't know if the fridge door is properly government monitored to be legit or not. I hope you guys, those that know me, know.
Feel like there's probably some paperwork involved with that.
Well, there ought to be. If there's not enough paperwork, damn it, it can't be legit, right? Rebecca Joe's got hard lemonade, pleading the fifth on smoking. Oh, so we're going constitutional privileges there. So I'm sorry, rights. I don't know why I said privileges. That was just wrong of me. So, anyways, for those that don't know, and I know I've got some of my people that watch later and aren't usually on the live stream. This is a Tabac Dolce. Dolce meaning some version of sweet in Italian, I believe. And this is what's called a flavored tip. So this has a sweet flavoring on it at the end here. Sorry, I was showing the microphone instead of the camera. So back to my being a consummate professional, right? So for those that's going to ask me, for a flavored tip, you do what's called a punch, which is a hole in the end, as opposed to cutting off the end, because then you cut off the flavoring. So I've got it punched. It's ready to go. I took off the band, and it's kind of got a, what's the word for that, guys? I forgot. Something foot. I forgot what that's called when it's ragged like that. It's not cut nice and neat. Forgot the name.
Uncircumcised?
No, I remember which end would be the analogy to that. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure I want to know.
Can we get Dwight in here to answer that question?
I mean, I need to keep this somewhat family friendly, but I would think it's according to whose perspective, right? From my perspective, it would be the part away from me. From someone else's perspective, it may be the part they put in their mouth. I'm not sure.
That's how you keep it family friendly, Tommy. Good job.
No, hey, Anyways. Oh, so Jimmy said if I get monetized in the future, my past videos will also be checked by bots and may be demonetized.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Until I see how much money it actually costs me, I don't care. So, anyways,
Okay.
tonight, so for those that have made it 10 minutes into this, tonight is I kind of got out of the habit there for a little bit. I had some tech issues, and to be honest, got really discouraged. And hey, dirty old man, hey, you just missed your part of the show. We just we were just talking about cigars and circumcision, so you kind of missed that.
His ears were burning. He had to come.
It's right. Oh, no pun intended there. I don't bump. So tonight's just a hangout. I got a couple things we can talk about, kind of spur the conversation. And yeah. So
Speak for yourself, Tom. All my puns are intended.
all your puns are intended.
Yes,
Okay.
very much so.
Okay. So, anyways, for those that for you there, dirty old man, we got me drinking a rye, Restoration Rye. Joe is drinking Yellowstone, and Kyle is drinking a Wheatley vodka. Excuse me, which is a wheat vodka distilled by Buffalo Trace. Excuse me. All of a sudden, I got the hiccups. That's not going to go well. So, anyways, got a couple things to spur conversation, but otherwise, just wanted to hang out with my buds here, do a little live stream talk. We'll talk with anyone in the chat and kind of go where the night takes us. And I want to the things I want to share are articles, not videos. So I'll at least be able to check and see if technically that's a problem. If we've got a problem, even sharing articles, then that'll lead me down one path. And if I don't, then I'll know that's not an issue. So in any case, just wanted to get on here, try to get back in the habit of getting it going. Kyle's been a very good encouragement about keeping me thinking about, hey, you doing something. So meant to last night, just wasn't feeling it. Originally planned it for Monday night. Didn't realize that was the college football national championship game. So that wasn't going to happen for two reasons. One, less people would watch. And two, I was going to watch. So there. I was going to watch the game. So anyways, here we are, Wednesday night. We're finally up and moving. And here hanging out with my buds. So you guys, for anyone who may not have watched the show before, that give them a brief rundown of who you are and why you're here hanging out with somebody like me.
Kyle, you go first.
Oh, thank you for the honors, Joe. Why I'm here? Like Tommy said, we're just kind of hanging out. Joe and Tom and I don't get to hang out enough, really. We all have separate lives with different jobs, and but we're all trying to help Tommy get this going. He's been a big influence in my life in several areas, and I believe for Joe as well as a lot of other people we know. Informed, educated, and knowledgeable on a lot of different things, which is why we try to keep this channel on a lot of different topics, I believe. And we get a chance to hang out and kind of just talk and joke, but also talk about a lot of things that are going on in the world that depending on the topic need addressed, need some need some light shed. For instance, tonight I'm kind of walking into this. We've been in scenario-based training, all kinds of stuff. We don't know anything, so tonight I'm kind of walking into this. But I do know the title is "Crime and Punishment for a 6-Year-Old Child?" ? Exclamation point. So I can only assume this is going to be about some sort of something that's really kind of out there, something you wouldn't expect to hear about, see. Maybe televised or advertised. Probably going to be a good topic once we get into that. But we've done stuff on the BATFE. We've talked guns. We've talked booze. We've talked cigars. We've talked self-defense. Legicator gets in here and we talk about his perspective from
irony of Popo.
Yeah, we get a police officer's opinion on different matters. Joe is actually educated and licensed in the medical field, so that's a cool perspective. I don't know, man. I think it's a cool opportunity. I support Tommy and all of his endeavors. We've tried to do a few things on our own on the other side of things. Him and Joe have actually been in business together as well. So we're just a group of friends that try to support one another in whatever it is we're trying to do. And this is something we can all kind of do, even though we're not all together. Well, you two are, but we can all kind of get together and common interest and hang out and try to get Tommy rolling with this YouTube thing.
I had to put him in another room like we're an old married couple or something, man.
Well, I mean, you know.
I was actually afraid I was afraid we were going to get the sound loop going. Yeah.
Yeah. I was wanting to ask Chad about that. Is there any feedback coming from either me or Tom?
I can hear the delay. I can hear you with my ears, then I hear you over the speaker. Okay. So I can tell how big the delay is. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I can't really hear anything that would make me think there's any kind of tech issue with you guys being in separate rooms.
No feedback or nothing echoing or okay, cool.
Super.
I've heard Uncle Danny a few times, but I don't think that's a feedback issue.
Okay, so yeah, Lisa's covering for some buds there. She said they're not going to make fun of you for Pepsi. She already said she's drinking the water. Yeah, we at least know the Pepsi goes through the proper government channels before you're allowed to drink it. Okay, we know of its quality. It didn't just come out of some damn fridge door. So the inside joke there, folks, is I'm kind of very liberty based. I'm not a libertarian, but I'm very liberty based, and I judge things on that way. So a lot of things we talk about on and off air, if you know, it's just liberty, less government versus more government, et cetera, et cetera. So when you mentioned water, it was just an easy joke for me to talk about, you know, what quality is it? Where did you get it? Is it legit or not? So that's sort of the inside joke. Is I'm always sort of down on a lot of government. So, but yeah, we at least know Dirty Old Man is drinking something that's gone through all the proper channels before.
I do have to ask though. If it's diet water, because I've really struggled to find that lately. So is the water diet water or just regular water?
Fluoridated. See, government. She's got the government. If it's fluoridated, she's got the government version. She's got government water.
Well, actually, I think it's tap water plus because it came out of a fridge, and a fridge should have its own filter system. So,
would that make it plus or plus?
Wouldn't that make it minus? Filters?
You bring up a good point. Point. We should probably call legislation and ask them.
We should probably move on to the topic of this video before
Joe, why don't you? Yeah, Joe gets distracted real easy. He'll be counting his mustache ears here in a minute. Won't you intro yourself, Joe, to those that may not know why we should care that you're here?
Well, I mean, I'm here to hang out with Tom and Kyle. I don't know why they have me here other than to drink their whiskey and hang out. Me personally, as Kyle already alluded to, I am a medical professional. I have to label myself as such. I have all the licenses and stuff. Got the shots and the verification. So, yeah.
Joe is fully got all the government in his bloodstream. I, of course, had that happen a million times while I was in the Army. I got vaccinated with things I have no idea what they are. Not a clue. I even had him pull out this gigantic. I had him pull out a gigantic vaccine for me once before I went to Honduras. It was in a stainless steel container about this long, and all she did was screw a needle on the end. Right? It was that big. I took the whole thing, and it was a syrup. Told me if I remember, a gamma globulin. GG shot, gamma globulin shot. No, and it was needle. It was a needle. Okay, and it was a very attractive young female nurse in the Army, and she had me drop my pants back when I was not used to that kind of thing. When I was a much younger, naive gentleman, and none of that's true anymore. Not young, naive, or a gentleman. So it was kind of embarrassing. So the memory really stuck in my head. Plus, having about 4 ounces of a cold refrigerated syrup injected into your left butt cheek kind of leaves a memory too. It was very hard to walk for a while, but it was a needle. I promise, it was a needle. It did not vibrate, and there was no hands on my shoulders. No hands on my shoulders. So, okay, maybe we should move on.
Yeah. Maybe you should tell them your highly computerized test that you had to do for the military, Tom.
Oh, that's dude. I need to remember that, but I'm going to save that for another show.
Yeah,
I'm going to save that for a show when we talk about medical technology.
sure.
I think that would be a good story for that time. And you know what? That may actually go viral, and I'm not sure I even want that to happen. So
Yeah,
I do.
I do.
It's like, oh, you're that famous guy from YouTube that had blah 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 happen to you. No, I don't really want
it
that.
was in the 90s, so it's an easy.
It was a long time.
It
It was a very long time. It was a very long time ago. So, in any case, down to a little bit of seriousness. 21 minutes in, a little bit of seriousness. Dirty Old Man said that cigar reminds me of a big blunt.
Yeah,
I've never. I know most everyone calls me a liar when I say this, but I've never partaken of the wacky weed, and so I have to take your word for it when you say what it reminds you of. But I've been told that many times. So hey, Arrington Auditor's here because he's dropping in to show his support, and he's saying hit that like button and have a great night. Yeah, not feeling well. Hey, Arrington Auditor, thanks for being here, and hope you feel better soon. And too bad we couldn't have you. That's Uncle Danny migrating back to his hole that I used to live in, right? He's migrating down to his hole for the evening, passing in the shadows behind me like a homeless man. But if you knew him, you'd know how true that is. Yeah. Okay. So, in any case, so let's get some conversation spurred here. And hey, where'd he go? Is he still here? He's not saying anything anymore. Jimmy Craft, hey man, once you comment in here too, man, this is interactive. That's sort of the great beauty of live stream. You got your people on the panel, it's on the screen with you. You also got people off on the side, and you're having a conversation together. And I think that's really cool as I've learned to embrace the live stream format. So let me see here if I can bring up what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Chrome tab.
While you're looking for that, me and Kyle will just talk at each other. How's life been, bud?
Hey, Joe.
In addition to being a good friend to these two men, I'm also their personal pawn shop. I buy their firearms when they're in hard times.
Very true. Very, very true.
Come on. True. Let's see here. Let me add this to the stream. There we go. Okay, so I can read this from. Did you guys see any kind of delay when I did that, saying that we were going to review tech issues while I'm here? Did you guys see any kind of delay or any issues when I was doing that?
Not that I noticed, no.
I mean,
Okay.
there were some audio delays, but that was
Well,
just
but
cutting in.
were you getting your audio delays through your ears or through the system? Were they different audio delays than before I added the page?
Hey, me? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, it was before
Well,
you
talk about audio.
added the page. It was during me and Kyle's conversation.
That's when I added the add there.
Dirty
Okay,
old
so
man
that's
said
helping me
no
even-
delay on his end.
Let me see if I can zoom in there per request. Okay, great. That's good info because the reason I'm doing this is to shoot. I apologize. How to zoom in. Away from the article. I don't know. Let me go. Yeah, try zooming in. You have it on the browser to use. I don't know, unfortunately. This is an article. I think I'm looking up the 7-year-old shot his mother. So it's on the news. Back to StreamYard now. I actually of the screen here. So, like I said, working through some tech issues. That tells me that the issue. Okay, Tom is roboting a little, on and off. Okay, thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate. Okay, same dirty old man. Appreciate that feedback, because see, this isn't even video, Kyle, and it's causing that. So I got to figure out what's going on with that before I start putting too much effort into expanding or doing a really better job here. Okay, so now that I'm not going back and forth, it's good according to what dirty old man's saying. So yeah, it's a problem in my system then. So that really helps me narrow down. Well, I just tripled my RAM. I'm up to 24 RAM, and it solved a lot of other problems on my computer. So I'm guessing I've got a video processing issue. So no problem. Okay, so the article that I have is the 6-year-old boy, and it's funny how the media work these days, even when it's not a political thing, and this isn't a political issue yet that I'm about to talk about. They say accused of shooting. No, he's not accused of shooting. He did it in the middle of class in front of a ton of witnesses. It's not alleged. It's not accused of. The 6-year-old boy did in fact take a gun to school and shot his teacher. And from what I've read, shot her. She must have been putting her hand up in a defensive gesture, and shot her through the hand and into her chest. And that's exactly what I'm thinking, Rebecca Joe. I'm going to have to upgrade video card to add some good video processing. But I'm slowly narrowing down the issues. It's not Wi-Fi. That was the first thing everybody kept telling me. Wi-Fi is working great. Tripled the RAM, so I think that's probably okay. I'm going to have to add video RAM, video processing power is what it's going to take. So anyways, this student's mother legally purchased a gun and used it according to the Newport News, but officials specified how the boy got a hold of it. Yeah, this is a trained professional writer. If it was safely secured. So what I've been reading is now they're in the process of determining, or haven't said it publicly anyways that I can tell, whether or not the parents had it secured properly. It is a very sad story. For one, that a 6-year-old boy would do that. It's a crazy thing that nobody thinks that, but kids get angry too, and they don't have the processing power to decide right and wrong as well. He probably knows right and wrong in the most rudimentary sense, of course, but understanding the consequences that would be coming to him for doing this, there's no way he could know. There's not enough life experience for him to understand the consequences of those kinds of actions. So that was the one story I want to if you look down there at the bottom, it does have a misdemeanor law meant to protect children 14 and younger from access to firearms. So there is a law, apparently, either city law or the state of Virginia, about and from what I'm reading here, what my guess is to protect children 14 and younger. So in other words, if you're 14 and younger and your parents stored it properly, we're not going to charge you higher because it's their fault you had access to it. That's my interpretation of that without going. Well, Rebecca Joe, we're going to talk about that here in just a moment, about if it was properly stored. And by the way, we did the AT part of our ATF intro, but we didn't do the F part. So what gun have you got near you there, Joe?
Who, me?
Yeah, you're Joe.
I don't have a gun at the moment. It's out in the car.
Okay. Out in the car. By the way, I've since heard that over 75% of illegal gun use, like guns secured in the car, stolen out of cars, is the majority of the illegal gun market. I've got a Ruger 8-shot 22 revolver, the LCR that my dad left me when he passed, on the table behind me, laying beside alongside my carry gun, which is a SIG 3, the original length, original version, general carry gun. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I got my 365 here over by the chair, which is pretty much where it stays unless it's on me. And then behind me, back here, I do have a shotgun that I keep readily available in the house.
Okay.
It is a
Now, since this is
CZ712.
what the gauge is it?
That's a CZ712. It's a 12 gauge semi-automatic shotgun.
12 gauge. Okay. This is why I'm trying to figure stuff out, Joe. Right. Okay, can you hear me now? Am I back in? Man, I tell you what, this isn't going to go very far unless I can figure this stuff out. Can everyone hear me now? We good? I'm not getting any reaction out of anybody. Yep. Okay, yep. Good.
I got you.
Good. Up here. Yeah, and all I did was share a tab. This is than I thought. Yeah. Lisa says, don't want a 6-year-old baby thrown in jail, but teachers and students should be protected. So what do we do with them? Okay, that's some of the stuff I assumed would spur that kind of conversation. We're going to get to that. I tell you what, I am not going to share the next tab because of the tech issues. I learned what I needed to learn in terms of tech issues tonight. So I'll just read you another one. On December 29th, this story was written. It's on Yahoo News. Phoenix fatally shot his by him. A obsessed 10-year-old boy fatally shot his mother for refusing to buy him an Amazon virtual reality headset, grieving family members say. The boy has been charged as an adult with first-degree reckless homicide over the 21 November shooting of mother of four, Kiana Mann, 44, in the basement of her Milwaukee home. A criminal complaint states that the boy, who has not been identified, took his mother's keys and retrieved the gun from a lockbox before firing and killing her as she did laundry. Don't really need to go into a whole lot of detail. The rest of the article, you're interested in reading the whole article, it's there. But it really not necessary for us to be able to, for us to be able to talk about these issues. So the reason I said hold on there just a second, I believe it was Lisa, about how did they get it, and if it was secured properly, how would they get it? Well, now we have one answer. Mom locks it up in a lockbox that has a key. Kid's 10 years old. He knows mom's keys. Go get it off the key ring. Now, you could say you could fix that with buying, but nothing's perfect. You know, tech fails, as we just have been witnessing. Tech doesn't always do what you want it to do. He shouldn't have known where the kid. Sure, I mean, I get that, Rebecca Joe. Absolutely get that. And you know, this is nothing to take lightly. Of course, the mother was killed by her own 10. So you know, you could sort of say, you know, the punishment's already been served there in a way. But Joe's been in many of my classes, the gun class he's set in, and Kyle's heard this part of my lecture when I teach classes, and we talk about the 3 C's. Remember, we talk about, everyone wants to talk about their Second Amendment rights, and I'm one of them. Both of these gentlemen here with me tonight will talk about Second Amendment rights often. But what people almost never talk about are responsibilities that go along with those rights. And one of the responsibilities that I teach in my class, keep access to firearms away from what I call C's for ease of explanation. And those are children, criminals, and crazies, right? So one of those statistics I said I just learned, by keeping your gun are automatically giving a substantial increased access to criminals, because criminals aren't going to respect your car window, and they're going to get what they can find, and then it's out on the market. even if they didn't break in for the gun, they get the gun. Now, if they're breaking in for spare change for drugs, whatever, now they hawk the gun. The gun's in the hands of someone that wanted the gun for a gun-specific reason. So, and that's how 70% of guns used in crimes illegally or illegal guns used in crimes are obtained is in people's cars. So that's the criminals. Create a whole nother issue. You know, if you have mentally ill in your family or someone that can't be trusted with their own judgment for whatever reason, then you got to keep it out of their hands as well. But then the third C that we're going to talk about tonight is children. So I'll tell you how I feel about it. Those of you that don't know already, I have a substantial background in constitutional history and constitutional scholarship, which is why Chad began bringing me in the Legislator channel to discuss Chile and all of his goofiness, claiming to be a constitutional scholar. I actually am. I actually study quite a bit of it at Ohio State and do my keep up almost on a daily basis. I keep up on a lot of constitutional issues. The Ohio State University. Thank you very much, OH. So, in any case, so here's my little lecture on it. In terms, right, IO. So, in terms of storage, I believe it's up to the individual. I don't believe any politician needs to tell you exactly how to store a gun. Let's say, for sake of argument, sake of illustration, you live in an extremely high crime area, and you believe maybe you have tangible evidence of people being broken into. And trust me, it's happening in drug-ridden parts of the nation. You've got people being broken into in the middle of the day when they're at home, and the person outside breaking in knows they're home. So you may believe you need to keep that gun very readily available. On the side, you may live in a gated community where the crime rate is virtually nil. Then you have to weigh that against the possibility of tragedy, like these two families that we've talked about tonight have been. No politician can decide that. No politician can make a law that would apply to circumstances. I know specifically of an elderly, a former fire instructor, former hand-to-hand instructor, that, and this is the normal flow of urban history, right? This is normal. Even in one race or predominantly one race communities, this happens, where you have a up-and-coming neighborhood that takes relatively affluent or hardworking, decent earning people, and they move into that neighborhood. Then there will be some people in that neighborhood that will stay there for 50 years as they turn into an elderly couple. But around them has been decay, whether it's urban decay or even a suburban decay. And you'll have a different variety of people that now live around you, not necessarily a different race. This is not about race. But the person I got to know many years ago that told me this story did live in a suburb of Chicago. Okay, dirty old man, appreciate it. Lived in a suburb of Chicago that had white flight and did turn into an African-American predominantly community. And a drug-rattled person was breaking in his door, the back door to his house, while he was in the morning drinking coffee. He had his gun on him and with him, as was his habit. His wife had been, Chad's back, had been his norm. It had been his norm to keep a gun nearby, and he had trained his wife, if anything happens, I say words, this is what you do, right? He trained her to go to the bedroom, get on the opposite side of the bed, back into the corner, point the shotgun at the door, and if anybody comes through it other than him, to shoot him, right? That had been what he had trained his wife to do in self-defense in the home circumstances. So he told me that he went to the door and was yelling through the door, hey, I'm home, blankety, blankety, blank. What do you think you're doing? And still kept beating in the door. I assume they thought, well, even if we get in the middle of the day, we can beat up the man. This isn't going to be a problem. But he ended up actually tells them he has a gun. They keep coming through. He come through and he shot her. So, I know these things happen. So this is where you get the argument about storage. Storage with having a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old around didn't apply to this elderly couple. And I had us introduce our guns earlier specifically for this reason. Kids getting a hold of your gun, is that an issue in your life, Joe?
Um, it is to an extent, but I keep most of my firearms secure when I'm not carrying them on my person.
Okay, so you have your nephew, correct? Is that who we're talking about? That's in your home
Yeah.
often.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So he has that issue. Kyle, what's your circumstances there without too many personal details, of course.
I got a bunch of daughters, man. You guys both know that, but I got nothing but daughters, varying in age. When they're around, like I said, I have several ways, including in the vehicle, to lock them up. They are locked up when they're present, unless they're my person, with the exception of the training that I have provided to them. So if there's ever any alarm, I guess I'd call it, that I would need to secure them differently, I would. However, all of my kids, I have made sure that they have at least a very basic understanding of firearms knowledge. So they are secure. Ammunition is stored separately from firearms other than those that I carry on my person daily.
Wow. All I tried to do here was show Rebecca Joe's comment, and it slowed everything down. Okay.
She's not wrong.
I'm pretty sure she was. Yeah, she was talking to you, Kyle. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Probably shouldn't go into any details there, right?
Nope.
Yeah, Leducator, what you missed was, of course, two kids that was not about curiosity. A 6-year-old kid in Newport News, Virginia, shot his teacher. 6-year-old took a gun to school, first grade, shot his first grade teacher. And then we talked about a story where a 10-year-old, and I forgot what city it said that was in. A 10-year-old got mad when his mom said she would not allow him to go into Amazon and buy a virtual reality headset. And he went and got her keys, accessed her lockbox, got her gun out, and shot and killed his mom while she was doing laundry. So, this is definitely not about the curiosity variety. So, since I asked these two guys how kids and guns apply to their lives and storage, etc., my personal life is I have my Uncle Danny's all that lives here in the house with me, and he's got his own gun. And I have, like, for instance, today my grandsons came home with me after school. And they're both trained by their dad before me, and then eventually, as I became a trainer in the firearms industry, I've had them on the range quite a bit, in different scenarios as far as training goes. One of them actually went through my youth league that I ran, and not an issue as far as them gaining access to mine and taking them anywhere. But yeah, mine are and have been for quite some time in my life, based on my judgment of my life. Just laying out. I haven't secured guns. Now, when I have a get-together at a house or a party, or when my son-in-law brings over his daughter, now she's very young. I don't know much about her, if there's any anger issues or anything, or curiosity issues, but I don't need to judge that. When she's coming over or anything similar, they're put away. They're put away in a way they can't access, as well as when I have a party or whatever. Usually I've got one on me during a party, actually, because you never know what in the hell might happen at a party, especially when somebody at your party invites other people that you don't even know are coming, and that does happen. So, if you remember the last party I had here, gentlemen, it's I live in Mullet of Lake County. The last party we had, and I think you guys, maybe we've already talked about this. None of my friends, none of the people that work with the firearms industry carry 40 cal. Nobody. Over the party, when I was cleaning up, there was one 40 caliber cartridge laying on the table out here. So that's been a mystery since the last party. Who brought a 40 cal? For one, what the hell and why? And two, why did they leave one here? And who? So there's a little mystery there. But of course, I don't pat down people to show up. So my point with all of that, talking about your guys' scenarios as well as my own, is there is no way that a politician can sit in a state house anywhere and pass a law that's going to serve the public. it's up to the individual gun owner. Responsibilities, which are the flip side of all of our rights. All of our rights come with responsibilities. And if educators still here, that dovetails in with the saying he talks about all the time. Just because you have the right to doesn't mean it's a good idea to do. Why did the 6-year-old shoot? Do we know? If we know, they haven't put that in any article that I've read, and I've read about 3 different on it, and they all just say the same news feed regurgitation. I'm not going to put your I'm not going to say we had 2 loaded guns in the house, bedroom, living room. If anyone's over, the one in the living room is put away. So yeah, there you go. My guess is, there's probably something else lacking in the lives of that 6-year-old and 10-year-old. Not blaming anybody. I'm not saying it's a parent's fault. It could be a lacking of mental health that is undiagnosed at this point. It could be sociopathy or psychopathy that's not been diagnosed. All kinds of issues that don't necessarily put the blame on the parents. Sometimes just tragedies happen, and sometimes kids do things that are tragic because they simply don't have the judgment to make a different judgment call. But did he take the gun to school for the purpose of shooting the teacher? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they determined early, is that's exactly why he took the gun to school, is to shoot the teacher. 6-year-old. 6. So, what's your thoughts, Kyle Joe?
Well, I guess I'll start. So I guess the issue is, one being, why should a 6-year-old have access to an unsecured firearm? But we did discuss events that can happen. Kids are super observant. Anyone that has kids kids watch people like a hawk, and they pick up on patterns sometimes. And yeah, so I imagine if the kid somehow knew where that firearm was being kept and knew how to get access to it.
Right. Yeah, Lisa's saying, sorry, I don't see the parents not being responsible. I mean, I tend to agree. Honestly, my knee-jerk reaction is absolutely, I agree with you. I can speak with 2 minds here. One, we don't know that. And I don't exactly want to blame parents for something I don't know. However, I think the likelihood is substantial that the fault will lie on the parents, that there shouldn't have been the right access.
Kids are
so Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and I can only speak from what I know or what I've experienced personally. But I mean, on this topic in general, like I said, I got a bunch of daughters. The youngest being 7, she just turned 7. For example, I cook a lot. I like to cook, but I also like to drink when I cook. Right. So one of my Christmas gifts from for my 7-year-old was a spatula with a bottle opener on it. I mean, kids pay attention to things. Great gift, by the way. I love it. It's come in really handy. I've used it a few times just since the holidays, even. But
I would love to be inside one of your kids' heads when they come up with that. It's like, what would Dad need or use? He cooks.
Man, I'm telling you.
He cooks and he drinks. Let's see.
I'm telling you, it was a great gift. I have utilized the hell out of it. But it goes to show that kids they pay attention. And it was really a sweet gift, right? I mean, because she wanted me to make pancakes with it, for example. But anyway, kids pay attention, right? So kids see things. Kids just because, I mean, they're little human beings, right? I mean, so their brains aren't fully developed. They don't fully understand. They don't comprehend the way that adults do with fully developed, frontal lobes and so on and so forth. I won't go into all that garbage, but they see things. So clearly this kid, I mean, at least understood, pull this part here, it goes boom. I mean, he understood what a firearm was.
Well, I think video games has increased the understanding of what a firearm is and how to use it.
Sure.
to a gigantic degree.
So I guess the only point I'm trying to make is access. It's hard to get inside. We don't know what the life like Lisa said, the home life. Clearly, if there was a loaded gun that the kid could access, not a good situation. But I won't speak on it any further than that because I don't know in what way he obtained it. It should have been better secured, I would assume, simply for the fact that
I think that's an assumption that we all agree with. That is a safe assumption. I just want to discuss it from at least a little bit from what could it be other than that, because that's obviously the easy one.
Yeah, so hard to tell, man. So hard to tell. Obviously the kid, in order for the child to think to take a human life, regardless of who it was, whether he learned, how a firearm, at least the basic functions from a video game or whatever, but or any other manner in which he learned how it would function. But clearly there was something going on in the kid's head that was not healthy or safe, to think that taking it to a school and doing what he did
that level was a meditation.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to take a gun to school, man, as a child, you can't have them there. I mean, it's plastered everywhere nowadays. No guns, and anti-gun this. There's signs on the school. If the kid knows what a gun looks like, he knows there's a sign posted on the front of the school door that has a gun with a line through it that says "No guns" or "Gun-free zone." Right. I mean,
Lisa brought this up. That's why so by the way, I was able to share it without any kind of delay this time. So maybe I closed the other tabs completely off my computer. So maybe that's helping. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I agree. That level of anger shouldn't even be an issue, you would think, for a 6-year-old. But we're all supposing about what goes on in this kid's life. It's hard to say. I mean, he may have witnessed something like this. Or threatened. There may be an abusive relationship that he witnesses that is all about somebody threatening somebody with a gun. I mean, we could surmise and guess and theorize all day long. But no, I agree. And let's see here. Rebecca Joe said in video games, the guy gets back up. And that's why I said, did he understand what he was doing? Yeah, I think he did. Did he understand the consequences? No way in hell. No way in hell he understands the consequences of, if I do this, what then to me? What then to them? I don't think he understands that. And then Lisa said, but a 6-year-old shouldn't be playing games like that. I agree. However, there's a big chunk of parents that use their phones, their iPads, and Xboxes, etc., PlayStations, as babysitters. And when I was a kid, they complained that parents used a TV set itself as a babysitter. So I mean, it's an issue, but I agree, Lisa. Rebecca Joe here has a comment that I really wanted to go into a little bit. My boys did, but I also talked to them, made sure they understood. So here's what I did with my kid. Right, I raised my son alone, virtually alone. And he spent the summers with his mom, but the entire school years was with me for 16 years. So from the time he was 2 to the time he graduated, and we were a gaming family. That's how we hung out. Me and him hung out and played Xbox. He also played a ton of sports. So I let him play a substantial amount of video games as long as schoolwork was done, things are basically done, and he wasn't in any trouble, which was rare with him. And he still played sports. As long as he was actually going out. I mean, we would have football practice or hockey practice, there would be something 6-7 months out of the year, taking up 2 or 3 nights, as well as game days on the weekends. So he wasn't an inactive kid. He wasn't sedentary, and he played. We played a lot together. And whenever he would play games that involved, some sort of violence, I would never allow him to play anything other than a good guy. And if I saw him behaving in any way other than the good guy, he would lose a privilege for a while. And even his buddies that would come over and play with him, I would watch him, not knowing I was watching, I would watch him stop them from being bad guy. So there was a game, and I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a big open map city, kind of a cartoony city, and you had this player, and you could go around. You were the good guy, and you would trying to get this whole gang of criminals. So you had to get rid of the whole gang throughout this extremely large map, this city. And as you would do it, of course, you would level up and get more abilities and all that standard video game stuff. But it was free reign. You could just go around as the good guy, just hijacking a car and then running over pedestrians if you wanted. You could just plow over entire crowds. So his friends had come over, and of course, that's the first inclination that a 7, 8, 9-year-old boy wants to do is get in the car and run through crowds. And my son would stop them because that's what he was not allowed to do. And he's like, nope, we can only be the good guy. And he would stop guy. And I think that's important because we create patterns in our brain. We know that now, that we create a way of thinking, a framework of how we think is created, especially by the age of 6. But I mean, it continues all the way through the rest of your life. So if he was behaving as the bad guy, I would stop it, and maybe a warning. And if he saw him doing it again or whatever, then he'd have the game taken away, et cetera, et cetera. Normal parenting stuff. But it was always a big deal. He could only be the good guy. There was a Call of Duty, Rebecca Joe, that came out. I believe it was a Call of Duty. It may have been one of their competitors. It may have been Medal of Honor, which was a series that was pretty good for a while, where you could play the Taliban. You could play the opposition. And he knew right immediately when we had that game, that version, he never even attempted to play the Taliban. Was never even a thought to him to play the bad guy. By then, it was fairly embedded in him. So there are ways to, in my opinion, as a father, and dealing with each kid is different, as I'm sure Kyle will attest with 3 girls. Each kid is different. And you have to mold your teaching and your guidance, in my opinion, to the kid. And I didn't have a whole lot of trouble with Zach. Zach still is extremely moral, ethical, upstanding young man, as far as everything I know, anyways. And never always give way to the unknown. But you got to reinforce that framework of right versus wrong. What is right? What's ethical? So forth and so on. We played a ton of college football. We weren't Madden fans, but we played a ton of the college football, Lisa. And so we spent a lot of time doing it, and games that had nothing to do with any kind of violence or sports. We played a lot of puzzle games too. But there was always the Call of Duty, we're a big military family, big firearms family. So there was always the Call of Duty style games as well. But you got to mold that teaching to the kid. I am not all video games are bad, all violence is bad, video games kind of thing. Just blanket thinking like that, I think, is almost never correct. So anyways, that's how I handle it. I don't know. I know Joe doesn't have kids, which so far, I mean, that you know of, right, Joe?
No, I'm pretty sure I don't have no kids.
Yeah, Lisa said she agrees with that. Yeah, you got to mold that teaching to the kid. If you got a kid that constantly wants to be the bad guy, you're going to have to handle that differently than I did with my son, right? Yeah, I better not go off on another story about another kid I know. Better not get too personal. But any your girls play video games, Kyle? I've not heard you mention video gaming much with your kids.
They do. The older ones date boys who play video games. I guess I'll start with that.
I think they date the video games and have the girl on the side is the way young men tend to do it.
Yeah,
that's my understanding. Yep, that's my understanding. We played some video games, man. I grew up. I guess I'll show my age a little bit without trying to show others, but Nintendo was real big when I was a kid. We had Atari, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. But we had a Nintendo and Super Nintendo, man. It was really all I remember playing a whole lot. There was some other stuff that came out when I was, an older kid or a young adult. And then, as the years went on and the kids, wanted video games and stuff, we bought some Xboxes and stuff. I do remember playing some Xbox in late high school or college, something around that time. But never been a real big video game person, really. My kids do play video games. I have an 11-year-old who recently decided that she wanted PlayStation games and all this and that. So I think the ease of playing games on phones and tablets nowadays is really, in a sense, at least in my experience, taken away from that. like I said, my kids aren't big video game kids, but you can play video games on about any device that's readily available nowadays. So they probably play more than I know. But who hasn't played Call of Duty or what was the other one, Tommy? Axis and Allies. I played computer games when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, I did too. I was mostly a PC geek, right? Yeah. Even though my tech
Axis and
problems
Allies.
here.
Axis and Allies was a big one when I was younger, and the internet was a big thing. Dial up, you had to wait forever to chat on AOL and to play any kind of anything. But I remember playing Axis and Allies on PC.
Joe is now. When I was younger, I was a D&D guy too, right? So I've had my mega geeky years, probably still am. But Joe does some D&D still today. And I remember in the 80s, right? In the 80s, that was all the satanic rage going to create serial killers and all of that. So, I think there's always a bit of truth in some of those, right? Like the parents of the 80s, the moral majority and their crusade against rock, playing records backwards and all that weirdness at the time. Is there truth to some of that? That some of those artists are preaching an anti-God, pro-sex, pro-drugs message? Absolutely. Is the answer, it's all bad? No, that's rarely like I said, blanket statements are almost always wrong. Almost always wrong. I'm sure when Gutenberg invented the press and all of a sudden people were learning new things and they did bad things with their new knowledge, people wanted to get rid of the printing press and they burned books. Any new technology gives new access to thoughts and ideas. And anytime there's a new thought and idea, one guy's going to do right with it and another guy's going to do wrong with it. That's just human nature. So I'm not a blanket statement or a blanket thing kind of guy. I think those are rarely true. Are you still doing the every other weekend D&D gatherings, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every about twice a month. If
Cool. Very cool.
schedules don't conflict,
Gotcha.
which
Right.
a lot of time they do.
Joe's got new pursuits in life recently, so I didn't know if he was still gaming. But yeah, I mean, whether it's rock, whether it's D&D, whether it's PC games, whether it's Xbox games, and now you got them all on phones, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, right? So, but let me go on to the next part of this discussion. The title, Crime and Punishment. So we got the 10-year-old that literally went and got keys, got a gun out, walked up to his mother and shot her dead. And you got a 6-year-old premeditated enough to find a gun, how we don't know yet, have enough anger or whatever inside of him, take it to school and shoot a teacher. So amongst us and in the chat group here, the people we got with us, any ideas what we do with that?
Well, as far as
Tough one.
yeah, as far as the 6-year-olds goes, he's probably going to end up with some amount of stay in a psychiatric facility, I imagine.
Yeah.
Get some counseling and maybe, learn some coping strategies for anger management. And, learn that, capping people's bad. Okay. You can't just shoot your teacher because she gives you a bunch of homework. As far as the 10-year-old, I fully believe trying them as an adult, just because of the fact that,
Well, let me play devil's advocate with that, Joe.
Yeah.
What's that going to accomplish? I'm not trying to put you in a corner. I mean, I'm just throwing out the stuff for discussion, for thought, right? What's that going to accomplish? Is there actually going to be any deterrent to other 10-year-olds?
Probably not.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
We got an echo all of a sudden. Hey, Joe, can you turn down? I'll turn down my volume on the output here. Turn yours down a little bit. We'll see if that fixes it. Let me know, ZX, if that helps it.
I can turn down my mic.
So anyways, if you put a 10-year-old in jail, Is that a deterrent to anybody?
Well, they wouldn't go to jail. They would go to a juvenile detention
Well,
facility.
okay, they're convicted. They're now convicted
You
of
know,
murder or reckless homicide, I believe is what they charged him with.
and honestly, I doubt they'll convict them to where they go to like a juvenile detention facility. I think they'll probably go again to probably a psychiatric facility because, their defense is probably going to be, temporary insanity or just blinded by rage and didn't know what they were doing at the time and just was so angry and so caught up in their anger and emotion that they did something that they could not comprehend the repercussions of.
Right.
And usually in those settings, they'll probably be in a psychiatric facility.
I think you have to start there at least with the 6 and the 10-year-old. You got to start with psychiatric because, like I said, there's several for me. There are several reasons that we punish. One is the punitive value. You did bad. Now you're going to suffer bad consequences because of your bad actions. The other is deterrence. That's the societal value of the punitive system. And I don't think either is going to be served by trying a 10-year-old as an adult. That's my personal opinion. But I mean, you got to do something. I mean, and that's the quandary that the system is in. You can't go, oh, well, they're just kids.
Well,
you can't do that.
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of the fault and blame probably lies on parents and upbringing. Parents are the ones that set the example and show them acceptable behavior. Lisa, I don't think you've ever seen a child throw a tantrum. Childs will throw.
Oh, I'm pretty sure she's got some kids. I bet she's seen it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you
might
mentioned.
throw a tantrum to the point where they go grab a glat and start capping at you. But
So, Joe, you mentioned coping skills, and I'm guessing that's what neither of these kids had. They've probably been in a life where they've watched people express anger in violent ways, is my guess.
Maybe. I mean, it's a possibility. It would at this point, all we can do is speculate because
it's all speculation, right?
We don't know what their home life was like. We don't know what their situation was in, whether either they were exposed to abusive situations or I mean, and even kids that are in healthy home environments sometimes still have developmental issues and other issues that usually require counseling and being evaluated.
I would say in regard to the 6-year-old, I would say the parents are.
Kyle, let me. ZX is saying a bit less gain on you would help. I don't know how we do that. If you have any idea, is it? I don't know if you're getting an echo too. I don't know why you would have an echo. So ZXL. What you don't know is Joe. Is that what you're calling yourself here tonight, Joe?
Jay
no,
Berg.
it's Jay Berg. I'm sorry, I got you wrong person, Kyle. Jay Berg.
Yep.
Jay Berg is in the same house. He's just in a different room. So that's why I had us turning down our monitor.
The mic volume might be too loud. Let me adjust it. Let's see if that's better.
Yeah, Rebecca Joe. I mean, this is something I've said, from my own experience, not preaching at others because I see them doing bad. I say it because I had to tell myself this. Good parenting can't be done when you're lazy. And I don't mean lazy as in you're not working. I mean, I remember when Zach was little and there would be things I would need to do as a parent to correct him or whatever the case may be. And I'm just chilling on the couch after work. And you're just like, ugh, I don't want to get up and deal with it. Mm-hmm. And then one day I realized when I don't want to deal with it, it doesn't get dealt with. And if it doesn't get dealt with, the attitude, the action, the behavior isn't corrected. And so that's when it just hit me, man. The problem with parenting is lazy. And that's what I'm saying. I was talking to me. And parents get overwhelmed. And that's I think that's basically what you're saying. His parents get overwhelmed. Mom was doing laundry, probably didn't have the money for a VR headset, and it's just like, no. Now, I don't know. Maybe she rarely said no. Maybe this kid tended to get everything. We don't know yet. But for whatever reason, there was enough premeditation there to go get keys, get a gun out, carry the gun in, and shoot his mother. And I do think a 10-year-old has a lot more awareness of consequences than a 6-year-old does.
Yeah.
Now, they don't have it like we do, but I think he understands mom was going to get hurt or killed, So go ahead, Kyle. What were you trying to say when I interrupted you there with tech issues?
That's all right, Tommy. No, I was basically going to say I think that obviously the situations are similar. They're both children and probably a lot of overlapping concerns, issues, and problems. But as far as the repercussion for the 6-year-old, I believe it'll be different than for the 10-year-old, not because of age, but simply because the 6-year-old was inadvertently, again, without knowing all the ins and outs, or I can only base this off assumption, but the 6-year-old was allowed access to a firearm by his parents, who then took it into a school and shot his teacher. I believe, as far as legal repercussion and the aftermath of that, the parents are going to be held responsible, and as they should be to an extent. The 10-year-old, well, it may have been similar, but the parent, or at least one of the parents, without knowing if is she deceased now? Did he kill his mother? Do we know that?
The 10-year-old killed the mother. Yeah, she's deceased.
Killed the mother. So clearly they can't hold her liable for anything. She's deceased. So I think.
Yeah, we don't know, Lisa.
As far as the 10-year-old, I believe, along the lines of what Joe said is probably extremely accurate, and that's based on the fact that I value his information as a friend, and then also his medical knowledge and stuff. He has some insight into that. But
Joe, you deal with mental illness more than you're not in just a standard hospital, correct?
That's correct. I work inside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Without getting, I don't want to get into the details, but yeah, that's what Joe works with, is mental health, and
right.
So a lot more insights than Kyle or I. Even though Kyle has an interesting, if we were talking about adults here, Kyle would have some seriously interesting perspectives.
I could give some perspective.
And you know what, Kyle, you may want to, if you want to, don't feel any pressure with this, but there may be some issues with parents that you're familiar with that may have contributed to this as well.
Sure, we have to look at all options. When you look at things, I believe what you're getting at is like behavioral health, mental health, which Joe has a lot of insight on. Behavioral health being a lot of times substance abuse, or things that follow, co-occurring disorders, things of that nature. So a lot of these parents, where things like this happen, we hear about things like this happening, may or may not have factors in their life that have prevented them from being good parents, right? Or let's say there's been no legal repercussion or legal charges to date, but they're legally, by definition, of someone who should not have a firearm. So they've never been convicted of a charge that would prevent them from obtaining a firearm. However, based on their current decisions or their lifestyle, they legally should not be in possession of them, right? If they're under the influence of substances or things like that. So clearly, if that is the case, again, this is assumption, and we're kind of going off, but also this is very on topic in the terms of this may be the reality of what went on. If they're not in their right mind because they're under the influence of some substance, well, they're probably forgetting to do what they should be doing with the firearm. So maybe that's how the kids got a hold of them. maybe the 10-year-old saw some things in the home that led him to believe that treating others and talking to others, or maybe drug deal gone bad. Someone pointed a gun at someone previous that he was witness to. I mean, this again, all assumption, all speculation, but a lot of factors.
We're just talking possibilities here.
Yeah.
No, none of us work for CPS. But I'll tell you, since you brought it up, I remember that point in my kids, in Zach's elementary education, where he was informed by the school, of course, that he had a resource in calling in child abuse or whatever. And me and Zach rarely fought, rarely had any heated words, even when he was a kid. But one day there was one, and he wanted to sort of puff out his chest a little bit at me. And I handed him the phone. I said, I'll look up the number for you. You can call it. I said, you want to call CPS? You go right ahead. But I said, I'll tell you one more thing, son. They don't have Xboxes at CPS. Now, they may put him in a home that did. I don't know. But I think I got the point across that you may win this one. You may call them. They may take you away. But if you think all of a sudden life's better, think again. And I was trying to plant in his head consequences. And, spent a lot of time as a parent doing that, explaining consequences. And my parenting style was I didn't really shelter him from reality. We had our own struggles as I was raising him. I was a single parent, so I only accepted jobs that didn't put him in a babysitter. So the way I would explain it to people is I'm going to raise my son, not somebody else. And so, I would only be able to take certain jobs, and that led to some financial issues. But I would let him know what the bills were. I would say, here's what we got, here's what we don't have, and here's why we don't have this thing or this place we want to go or do or whatever. So he always knew. And, without telling sob stories, he was aware. And he used that information as a kid to literally design how he's living his life now so that he wouldn't be living the same way that we had to when I was raising him. And I'm, very proud that he learned those lessons and I helped give him information to make those decisions. And that's, if I had to say a parenting route here that I'm positive these parents failed at, not positive, 99% sure, is they didn't teach consequences. Most kids, when they get disciplined, it's knee-jerk reaction from a lot of parents. You pissed me off, I grab you and I swat your butt, or I sit you down, or I yell at you, or whatever. And it's not. It's generally not, from what I've seen in most people, logically thought out punishment, logically thought out explanations to their kids. I've been gifted with those talents as a person, so I don't necessarily blame everybody. But I do see the benefits of, at least with my one kid. I have two. I was able to raise one. I wasn't the other. Different story. But I've seen the results of the fruits of my labor, so to speak, with Zach, because I did raise him. So here we go. Her daughter once said she was going to call CPS. I gave her the number and told her they would take her, not me. Oh, I hadn't thought of that angle, but that's another. Yeah, that's kind of what I said. But they're not going to have Xboxes there. So, and yeah, consistency is an issue, and it not being just about the parent. Sometimes, of course, as parents, we're mad because of a selfish reason, and maybe that's all these kids had. Who knows? We can, like Kyle keeps saying, we can guesstimate all day long and speculate. We don't know. And that's kind of how I wanted this conversation to go, for us to just talk about the issues, not talk about these parents. These situations have given us a great way to talk about a lot of issues. So we've already talked about storage. We've already talked about parenting. We've talked about video games. We've talked about mental illness. We've talked about substance abuse. And I knew that these subjects, these two situations, would give us a great platform to talk about a lot of things. So, my mom always said, because I said so. Father said so and told me why. I think both approaches are valuable. So, for instance, what I taught Zach, and if someone asks me, what I'll tell them is, you expect obedience first without explanation. So the kid shouldn't obey just because you gave them a good explanation. Now, I'm not saying your dad did that. I don't mean that, Rebecca Joe. I'm just saying my theory was, you obey me first. Then once you're showing obedience and proper understanding of authority, then I'll tell you the why. Because the rest of life, your boss isn't necessarily going to explain to you why. I was in the Army 13 years. They don't tell you why. Most of the time, you never get a why. And but your obedience is expected. When it comes to obeying the laws of the land, the why, if you don't understand the why, it doesn't matter. You're still expected to obey the law. And so I try to instill that obedience first to proper authority. And then hopefully you get to know why. So I would tell him why. And like I said, I would give lectures and lessons about it. I wanted him to have that information in his head to make decisions with. So the one I want to segue with, guys, into the next piece of this talk is how we now know that the judgment center of the brain, I believe you referenced it earlier, Kyle, the frontal lobe, the judgment center of the brain is not fully done growing and developing until we're approximately 26. And as soon as I read that, back when I first heard that, it took me to my experience in life, and I was able to be like, yeah, that's when things change for a lot of people, right? Those college years, all that partying, all that craziness that we all go through, tends to end right around that period. Whether you get married or not, whether you're an unemployed dude or not, we tend to change around that time frame. Our decision making changes, and these kids obviously were way short of that period of life. So you have to rely when you're younger on those that have that judgment. And so we got to teach them to rely on experience, to trust experience, which is about teaching them to respect parents. That's the Lisa said, geez, I was married and done having kids by 26. Yeah, I was pretty close to that. Right, Kyle, right. So I did not partake of alcohol. I did not partake of alcohol till my 27th birthday. So without going into my personal history, I was able in my life at that time to observe a lot of behaviors by people that had consumed alcohol. And I saw the general pitfalls. And it's actually a show I want to do in the future. And I'm actually thinking about doing it with some of the kids I work with permission of their parents, of course, to discuss alcohol consumption, especially alcohol consumption by youth. And by youth, in this context, I mean 26 and under. I don't mean illegal consumption. I mean just consumption by those ages and younger. Your judgment center is different. And alcohol already takes away judgment. That's what it does. So in any case, Rebecca Jo said she had her first at 30. So I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to about anything.
By the way, this Restoration Rye is one of those that on the nose, you get that you get some bubble gum, like the bubble gum that come out of baseball cards. You get a little bit of that, and I love it.
Big chew.
Yeah,
Big
exactly.
bubble
Bubble gum comes out of that Restoration Rye, and I love that on the nose.
I
So,
do love the Restoration.
Yep. So, hey, gentlemen, any other issues along this?
I think Lisa made a comment. It's like, I hope none of you work for CPS. We know CPS fails children a lot. Not necessarily. I'd say CPS is probably overburdened by the failures of parents to properly raise children, and failures of parents to be parents, and failures of society and parents. They're an organization that's meant to step in and help children in abusive situations and terrible situations when their parents are quite literally abusing them or mistreating them. And, we live in a day and age where that's happening more and more because either parents aren't raising their kids, or you have the drug epidemic where people, are strung out on drugs, having children while strung out on drugs. And, we've overburdened the system, and now the system's like, what can I do? I have to look at the most heinous cases and treat those. So a kid might be in a mildly abusive situation, but it's clothed and fed and relatively safe compared to the kid that's, being viciously beaten to the point of hospitalization or, being trafficked in sorts of ways that would make most people's stomachs just turn.
Listen, I'm going to go lighthearted here for just a second, but then I want to get back to what you mentioned on trafficking there, Joe.
Yeah.
Lisa, I mean Kyle, we may have an aquaholic on our hands here.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how
promote
much
it.
she's consuming. I don't know how much she's consuming, but are you sloshing when you walk yet, Lisa? That's what I want to know, because overhydration in modern America is an issue.
Some feedback issues there, Tommy, with you and Joe. So you know.
Really? Oh my God. Okay. I may have to go to a headset here in a minute. I hate those things. I hate doing that.
I will say, just to kind of piggyback off of what Joseph said there, and I do enjoy calling you Joseph.
That's fine.
I know it's cool. I call Tom Tommy. It's cool. The CP just clarify. No, I do not work for CPS, nor would I. That being said, I do work closely and have for many years, oftentimes with CPS in multiple states, and I do also know some people personally outside of work, and then also some of my employees who are foster parents. So they work closely with CPS. Both with work and in their personal lives. CPS is not perfect. I will testify to that time and time again. But nothing in our time is. So there are many reasons why I personally would not work for CPS. I won't go into detail on that. The topic, and just I guess to give a little more insight, I do work in the behavioral health field. That's kind of a blanket in the state that I currently work in. It covers a lot of things, not one thing in particular, but just behavioral health in general. And I have worked in that field now for over a decade, amongst other things. But for a decade, I have been involved in that field, and it's not a fault of CPS, the things that happen. However, they're not perfect either, like I said. So we can only speculate on that being a factor. However, the idea of CPS is, in my opinion, a good thing. So much like, public
we got to have
assistance.
something.
We got to have something, just like, government assistance and things like that. It's all a great idea. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Am I really a fan of it the way it is? Absolutely not. Do I believe in the ideology behind it? Absolutely. So I just want to kind of say my piece with that. And it's a crazy world, folks. For obvious reasons, I say that, just kind of like the topic here itself. I mean, a 6-year-old had access to a firearm and shot an educator who was there to educate him on how to be a good person and learn how to survive in this world and become, a person of purpose. And he shot that person. So clearly there are things that are designed to be good, that go wrong. So I guess if I was to just in a nutshell sum up what I believe this whole conversation outside of the banter and fun, which I'm greatly enjoying, I believe that's what the whole topic is just things are designed to be good, and they're not always good. Things are in place for a reason, but they're not always perfect. Ideology is wonderful, but reality is something different.
So Lisa says, do we need Judge Burwells in every county?
Absolutely.
So Kyle, you know what that means. Okay, I bet Joe doesn't. You don't know what the reference is.
No idea.
Judge Burwell was a judge here in the county of which obviously Lisa lives in or near, and I am in, Larry County, Ohio. Go ahead and look that up on a map. When I was a kid, Judge Burwell was the boogeyman. When you started acting up, parents would say, I'm going to send you to Judge Burwell. And Burwell was known in I believe it was the 70s, because I was a kid. So I believe it was the 70s when that era here locally was. And he would give parents the choice. We either take your kid, CPS or whatever the version was at that time.
Lisa,
We would either do
Lisa's
that
in
or
Larry
we're going
County.
to-
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Lisa said
I
I'm
thought
in
you said
Larry
you
County.
wanted to.
No,
Yeah, I see-
Lisa's
I see
in
that.
Larry
She's in
County.
Larry
Hey,
County.
Lisa.
So Judge Burwell, I mean, I know one, and there's dozens of stories. One I remember from my childhood was being told that in the middle of court, the judge gave a mother the choice: either take your kid, do whatever, or you spank them right here in court. He wanted to see that she did, and the parent chose the spanking, and right there in court, public. And then Judge Burwell became nationally famous, as Lisa's mentioning it. I don't remember 60 Minutes or 2020. Like I said, I was a kid at the time. It doesn't shock me at all, because the big claim to fame that I know is back when Larry Flynt was still strong running Hustler magazine. He would every month have an asshole of the month. And Judge Burwell was Hustler's asshole of the month one month. So that was the big claim to fame that I know. However, I know the effectiveness to your average kid with having that threat thrown at them by adults. He was the boogeyman, and it worked with at least my peer group. Obviously, not every peer group and not every parent used that method, but he was the boogeyman here in Larry County, Ohio. And I would say some version of that is needed nationwide. Absolutely. Absolutely. However, would the public put up with it?
No, probably.
I doubt it. And that's the problem.
Magazine comment.
What's that?
Probably the Hustler magazine comment that you mentioned.
Right. So yeah, if there's a 60 Minutes or 2020, I'm going to have to look that up and see if I can find that. That's interesting. That may be a cool show by itself there. Reminiscing the 70s in Larry County, Ohio, per 60 Minutes or 2020 or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, in the end, I personally believe that whether you're a Christian or not, whether you believe in a God or not, I believe you can be an atheist, whatever. I think it's irrelevant. If you can take the teachings of the Bible, as well as there's other faiths too that have great wisdom in them, if you can apply those to your life, it's going to be significantly better. And how to deal with children is one of those things that's in the Bible. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And obviously, like you said, Rebecca Joe, you can spank a child without beating him. Absolutely.
That's true.
And I know as a young parent, there was a preacher that was influential in my life as a young man, and he gave he actually wrote a book about it. And in the book, he talked about making a spanking a big ordeal, make the entire process something the child would dread, not just the spanking itself. So with my daughter, right, when I was still married to her mom, and I was raising her for that period of her life up to the time she was 7, when I would have to discipline her to that level, it was a big ordeal. I mean, we went in, we talked about it. We talked about what she did, what she should have done, what the consequences are. I mean, it was this big lecture on purpose. And then there would be the time for the spanking. And then the spanking would be kind of a formality, and then not to use your hand. Because that's a little bit more, maybe a little more psychology involved there, which could be, easily disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But use something other than your hand. And then afterwards, we would pray together with her as a child. And it was the entire process of learning, of being a parent, and teaching, the actual discipline and the punishment itself, along with the redemption at the end. And that's what I practiced with both of my kids. And I think that, at least I know for my daughter for sure, she dreaded the lecture. The lecture was the worst part to her, which was
still does.
The way it was supposed to be. What's that, Kyle?
She still does.
As we all
They both know my daughter. Yes. And never spank while angry. Absolutely. It should never be a knee-jerk reaction, like yanking your kid up by the arm and whacking them on the behind like you see in a grocery store occasionally, kind of situation. So no, absolutely. So, I think parenting is would I have rather had the skill of dribbling a ball great and shooting it and had a career in the NBA? Maybe. But one of the things God did give me, I think, is parenting. I think that's one of the things that I've been best at in my life. So with the help of advice from others, of course. But great relationship with both my kids, and they're both
Knowing-
fine adults, contributing members to society, etc. So
Knowing
very-
both of your children,
one
Tommy, I would agree.
yeah, I know you guys think that about my kids too, but you know, I tell people the blessings I was given with children, I've got exactly the opposite amount of success with women. So take that for what it's worth.
No one's disputing that.
I know. Did you notice nobody said you're wrong? No, Tom, that's not true. Yeah, so whatever. There we go. And we're all going to have a drink to that.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. And people tell me that all the time, and that is one of the best things as an adult that I believe every parent would agree. The best thing you can feel is when someone compliments you about your kids.
Mhm. Well, obviously you did a good job, Tom. You're not raising your grandchildren.
Well, I'm not dead yet, and neither are they. So the story has yet to be completed. But
So you plan on raising your great grandchildren? Gotcha.
Well, I have said to I've got 2 grandsons, and recently after our Christmas gathering, I put my arm around both of them, and I said to their mom, I said, I think I need to contact you and their father, who's an ex now for her. I said, I need to see if you guys will loan me the kids for about 6 weeks. I said, I think I can straighten some stuff out. And both of their eyes went big, and they kind of gave a very subtle nod, no. But so whatever, whatever.
Mhm.
And in my job, I'm used as the drill sergeant. So sometimes when I'm working in the school, they'll put me in a troubled classroom to straighten some things out. So I don't know. Kids seem to love me and respect me for the most part that I can tell. And so I guess those skills transfer over to not just my kids, but some other kids too. Like we said, we had Jimmy in here earlier. Jimmy took off apparently. Hey, Blueberry, thanks very much for showing up, man. I appreciate it. Did you have a live stream tonight? And if so, how did it go, my friend? ZXL is moderating 2 streams at once. Holy moly. He apparently does not have the tech issues that I have. Lisa says, I have 1 grandson. He's the only one we will ever have. He's not spoiled. He's just well taken care of. Right.
That's spoiled.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Blue Bear's saying he did. And yes, it went well. So that's good to hear. Good to hear. And Rebecca Joe says, we all need a drill sergeant every once in a while. Some of us more than others. By the way, since this is kind of a hangout session, I think we've covered the topic. If anyone has another angle on that to talk about, please bring it up and we will talk about it. But a new show that I thought I would not like, but I watched it and it had a profound effect on me, to be honest. The new show on Hulu called Special Forces, and it's supposedly it's a reality show where they've taken they had 16 celebrities on the first episode, and I suggest you watch it. Give it a try. They take 16 celebrities, and you have a guy from the SAS, a former Marine Recon guy. Oh, Kyle, especially when you pop back up. Having a little delay there on Kyle. I want to make sure he hears this, so I'll wait till he comes back. But anyways, they've got 4 former special operators, 2 of them from British SAS. 1 is a SEAL, I believe, and 1 is Marine Recon, if I remember. Yeah, we'll do Blue Bear. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Let's see. I think it's Copy. Hold on here. I'm figuring this out. Going to give a link here in the chat to Blue Bear because I don't know how to get it to him any other way at this stage. So there we go, and he can come up. But anyways, on the Special Forces show, I don't know what happened to Kyle. Kyle's just gone. I'm not sure what happened there, so he'll likely be back. Oh, wait a minute. I'll add him back.
Here I am.
Okay, so no, I was talking about the show Special Forces, and do you remember off Generation Kill, Rudy Reyes?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know this when I watched it, but he's playing himself in Generation Kill. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing himself, and he's also in this show Special Forces as one of the trainers, right? Anyways, here's the point I'm getting to. So you got these 16 celebrities from all different walks of life on this show, and they're taking them into a training facility that I believe is British in Syria. and they're going to run them through tasks with the idea that it's a special operators selection process. So here's what affected me. I've personally I was in the military 13 years, went through basic as this naive kid that had never had to do anything really difficult in their life at that point, which is true of most kids. Get the basic, talked to in a way that I'd never been talked to, disrespected and treated in a way I'd never been, had expectations put on me in a way I'd never been, et cetera, as we all understand. But then later in my life, I went through Special Forces Assessment and Selection in May 1992, and I got non-select, which means I went through the whole process, and in the end, they went, never mind. So I ended up transferring into a different MOS, and I ended up being a specialist doing that with Spec Ops. So I spent the rest of my career in the Spec Ops community. So I'm very familiar with how things work, the lingo, et cetera, et cetera. But in this show, you see these people taken out of their, and they volunteered for it, of course, they agreed to it, taken out of that and put into an environment that they'd never experienced. Most of them are celebrities or sports somebodies, and they've always been catered to, lauded, told how awesome and wonderful they are in most cases they're on the show. And you see on their faces and in their behavior, them go through this realization. And that's what really affected me, is watching them go through it. Some of the ways the show's made, of course, is a little silly and a little BS-y. What they're going through is not. What they're going through is organic, man. It's real to them. And that was, I mean, it was emotional for me. I'll be honest, man. It was pretty crazy to watch them go through that process, because I kind of raised my kids, of course, with a little bit of that. And I deal with kids, and when I deal with them with a little bit of that, when you want to offer an excuse and they're expecting someone to go, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that. In the end, life doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't matter. I mean, your parents may care, and I may care. It still doesn't matter, though. And that's what you see a lot of these people going through, is seeing that. I remember when my kid went to basic, Zach went to basic, ended up being an infantryman with the 101st Airborne Division for a few years. And he would text me back, because they had phones in training often, not all the time, but often. And he would send me LOL. He'd be like, Dad, the drill sergeant said, I'm going to take a shovel and dig right up in your ass if you don't, and he was laughing because he had lived through somebody saying, your excuses don't matter. Like, for instance, he would try not to get out of school, and he'd be like, he's a small kid. We're talking like third grade. And this is the classic example I give. He would say, Dad, my legs don't work. And he'd be pretending to cry and all this like kids do. And I'd be like, well, you better crawl your ass right over there and get dressed, because you're still going to school. And that's the way he was raised. Not in a mean way. I would laugh at the same time I was doing it. But in the end, he knew it was not an excuse. You get up, you get dressed, and we're going to go. That's all there is to it. So anyways, that show, for just, totally off the advertised topic, that was pretty cool, watching those people go through that realization. And I think for a lot of them, probably the first time in their lives, they had to deal with that. Hey, Blue Bear, what's up, man?
Oh, not much, brother. What's going on?
Oh, we just, I don't know if you saw in the news, the 6-year-old that took a gun to school and shot his teacher. And then there was an article that came out right around the same time talking about a 10-year-old that got his mom's keys, went to the lockbox where the gun was locked up, took the gun out, and then went into his mom while she was in the laundry room, if I remember right, doing laundry, and shot and killed her. So the main topic of the show originally, and we talked about storage laws. We talked about substance abuse issues. We talked about we cut a lot of the angles of it, and like I said, we kind of just finished most of the angles. But I am interested in maybe some takes you've got.
Well, here's my thing. It's not only locking up the firearms to make access harder, it is also educating basic gun safety. I don't have children of my own, but I do have stepchildren. And when my wife and I got married and I moved in the house, I'm a big 2A guy. I've got a lot of guns. The first thing I did was say, okay, this may be laying here, but you don't touch it. This is how you operate it. This is how you operate it safely. This is what you do when you pick up a weapon or someone hands you a weapon. You make it safe and clear. before you look at it. And I don't care if somebody, hands you a firearm and they say it's safe and clear, you check it. And this is how you check it.
Right.
And I've never had an issue in my house with it. Now, as far as like this 10-year-old shooting his mother, it sounds like that there was maybe a mental health issue going on. Maybe he was mad at his mom for something.
Yeah, that's the part I forgot to tell you. Is he had asked her to buy him a virtual reality headset off Amazon, and she'd said no. That was the precursor.
Okay, so somebody's got an echo. I don't know if somebody's listening on a speaker. I hear myself talking back.
I am. I usually don't have an echo, but the part you don't know, Blue Bear, is that Jay Berg there, he's in the other room. He's in the kitchen. So I think we're getting an echo from
You may be.
him.
I knew he had to be somewhere in the house because I recognize your shelves. Hey, I'm a bourbon guy. I
Okay,
don't miss good liquor when I see it. I've not tried Yellowstone. I'm doing 1792 right now. But okay, so that gives me a little bit more insight into what happened here. And this is the biggest thing I see working the street is when parents want to be their children's friend and not their parents. I was raised like you were. I was raised like you raised your kids, which is the same way I kind of raised my kids or my stepkids, which it took them a little bit of time to get used to because they weren't used to that. They weren't used to that tough love.
What ages are we talking about when you began that?
13, 14, maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So they were, early teens. So they weren't used to that tough love. They weren't used to someone telling them, get in here and get these dishes done. Clean your room.
Right.
Right. Now my wife, God love her, she's a great mother. And she was doing the best she could with them, being a single mother. And,
right.
Now both of my stepchildren respect me. They know if I ask them to do something, then it's not, oh, well, I'll do it later. I'm going to do it right now because I don't want to get a boot in my ass. I'm not military. I've never been in the military, but I'm second generation cop. I grew up in the federal prison system. My dad worked for the federal prison system. So you can just imagine
You're
my
a family of
upbringing.
tyrants.
But they've gotten used to that. And here's the thing. Now that I have one of them that's married and out on his own and got a brand new baby, he's learned how to provide for his family. Now, there's still things that he has questions about, and he knows that I'll do everything I can to help him. But some things he has to figure out on his own, and he's become a critical thinker that way. How am I going to make this work? And that's the key thing that a lot of parents don't get these days, and a lot of things that I see, and CPS has got parents scared to death, saying, oh, well, you can't discipline your children.
Yeah, we did talk about them a bit too.
All 50 states, you can discipline your children as long as it's not abuse. Now, where that line of
we
abuse
talked about
is,
there's a difference in that too.
Yeah, there is a difference. I had a lady one time tell me, well, this is my grandkid. I'm raising him, but they told me I couldn't discipline him. And I got in my trunk and got my law book out, and I had the page dog-eared. And I opened that book up on her kitchen table, and I said, ma'am, this says right here in this law that you can discipline any child in your care or custody as long as you do not abuse them. I said, now, when I leave here, if you want to take a belt to him, as long as you're not using the buckle and being excessive with it, take a belt to him. it irks me that these parents call me or my brothers and sisters to come and discipline their children when it's not our job. It's their job as a parent. Well, I can't do anything with them. Well, if you would put a boot in their ass and be a parent and not their friend, you wouldn't
Right.
have these problems. You know, and that's where all this begins. You know, you were talking about a 6-year-old taking a gun to school. Okay. Was this child taught gun safety? Was this gun secured? Were there steps being taken to secure all the firearms in the house from a 6-year-old that doesn't really know better other than playing
Right.
Fortnite
Yeah,
on Xbox?
The articles don't give us any of those answers. Yeah, the articles don't give us any of those answers at this point. So that's why, it led to a lot of discussion here, because we could talk about all the possibilities. But
Yeah, I
actually,
mean,
we
you
don't know.
could you could what if something to death, but without facts
Right,
and
right.
proof,
And that's what we've
you're
done.
just you're speculating, which
Yep.
kind of goes to the level of assumption. And you know what you do when you assume. You make an ass out of you and
You
me.
sure you wasn't in the military? Are you sure you wasn't in the military, man?
No, I wasn't in the military. I that's one thing that I will not claim. I do not do fake valor.
Good for you.
That I respect our military, and honestly, hindsight is 2020. I wish I would have done it. But when I was 18 years old, I was one of those type people that I knew that if somebody got in my face and told me my mama was a whore, they'd eat your teeth. And then I'd be dishonorably discharged, and it wouldn't be good for the rest of my life. So
Right.
I knew
Right.
that was not the time for me. But sitting here now at 40 plus years old, I look back and go, should have done that. I should have bit the bullet. I should have taken it and done it, because I could be a lot of different things that I want to do in my life
I'm
now
not here,
that
but
I
you would
wish
tell
I
you
would
the
have
same
done.
thing. Right. Oh, I say it all the time, man. I need about 34 lives to even try all the stuff that I'd like to try, let alone actually get them accomplished. But Kyle will tell you the same thing. When I first started hanging out with Kyle, and I'd met him. He had been a concealed carry student of mine, and then eventually he became my boss. I became the trainer of the gun shop that he owned. And when I started getting to know him, he'll tell you, man, I just assumed he was a veteran. Now that I know him better, I know his life better. He was raised by a veteran, and that's why I think part of the residual military bearing that resides in Kyle comes from is he was raised by a veteran. But he would tell you the same thing. I mean, he says that all the time. He really wished he'd done it, but sometimes
my thing is I've hung out with a lot of veterans.
I'm sure you have. Yeah.
You got to think a lot of law enforcement officers are veterans. So you kind of get that mentality and that lifestyle, because that's the people you hang around with. But
so I wanted to talk about what Lisa was. Yeah,
okay,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to bring up what Lisa was saying here. Something you see in schools now. Parents will do and say anything to keep their kids out of trouble. They'll defend everything they do. I even had a kid say to me that if he got in trouble, his mom would come in and I would lose my job. But I was just going to tell Lisa, absolutely. I mean, we see that all the time. I think more now than in the previous few decades. But one time my son got in trouble. The principal called up, and this is before I eventually became friends with this principal. But before that, she called me up and she's like, Mr. Hall, your son got in a fight today. And I'm like, oh, no way, And she starts telling me, she goes, well, we have a zero tolerance policy, which zero tolerance, I think, is always a problem. However, she said, so I have to punish him, but I want you to know that there was a mentally handicapped kid in his class, and they were out on a playground, and some other kids were picking on him. And I guess Zach went over and clocked a couple kids for picking on the mentally challenged kid. And I said, I laughed, and I was like, well, okay, I'm just going to tell you, when he gets home, we're going out for ice cream, though. And so I defended him, but I think, in this case, I think that was okay. But that just reminded me of that story. But you're right. Parents now, when we were kids, and I think Kyle at least was raised old school. I don't know about Joe in this specific regard, but I know Kyle was raised old school. I bet his parents automatically assumed the teacher or the principal was right and not the kid. And I know I was raised in that era, and I'm assuming you too, Blue Bear, where the authority is like, yeah, the authority, the parent would have said correct first until maybe other information came in. But now it's the opposite. And I think that's what Lisa's saying. Now they assume the authority's wrong and the kids need defending. And so it's a flip. It's a flip.
And if you look further down, she says, by the way, he got in trouble and I kept my job. So
yeah, exactly. So eventually, it turned out right.
I got in a fight when I was in school, and I got my licks in the principal's office, and I knew I was going to get it twice as bad when I got home.
Right.
And you're a teacher. I think corporal punishment needs to be brought back into schools. I think kids would respect people more. And we wouldn't have as many problems with our youth as we do. That's my opinion. Someone may disagree with me, and that's perfectly okay. But that's the way I was raised. And, when I was in school, if you messed up, you went and took your licks, you learned your lesson, and you didn't do that again. Right. It creates responsibility for your actions.
Well, I mean, it creates responsibility. It creates an understanding of consequences. It creates a respect for authority in general. Like I had a kid sitting next to me recently that was telling me she didn't care about something she had done that was going to lead to consequences. And I said, what do you mean you don't care? Of course you care. And she said, no, I don't. And I said, well, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to alternative school. And she's like, okay, fine. And I said, well, when you get to alternative school, because it was about her phone, something about her phone. I don't remember exactly what it was, and I said, well, when you go to alternative school, you're not going to have your phone there either. And I said, and if you don't submit to their authority while you're there, guess what's next? Next is some sort of CPS group home, some worse version of that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I said, here's the thing I taught my kids. I said, eventually there will be an authority you can't resist. And I mean, you, Blue Bear, you represent that in our society. You may do all kinds of crap to your parents, and that may work in your home for X amount of years, but eventually you're going to be out among people that don't care about you. They're not going to give in to what you want and your little whims. And eventually there's going to be a boss. That's the way I described it to my kids when they were younger. Eventually there will be a boss that you will have no choice. And I mean, literally no choice. Mm-hmm. And that's what, you represent that sort of peak, you're the peak level before somebody gets into a system, whether it's jail or CPS or a group home or any of those other alternatives that the system has. You are the last thing they get before they enter into that system. And there will be an authority that you can't resist, and you can't say no, and you can't say you don't care. And it not caring will only hurt you. It ain't going to hurt anybody else.
And like Lisa says there at 1126, she said, I think the problem with kids comes more from home than school, though. And I agree with that 1,000,000%. Oh, yeah. Right. It all starts at home, and it starts at the adolescent age, kindergarten and up. It starts at home and how you teach your kids. It's learned at home. And if you learn to tell your kids no and learn to teach them that there's consequences to their actions versus, oh, well, it's okay, we'll buy you a new one.
Right.
Well, that's what I've tried to teach.
You just said there. They're learning one way or the other. They're learning one way or the other.
Yeah.
They're not learning. They're going to learn a version that's going to serve them in their lives, or they're going to learn a version they're going to suffer for. And I think that's the realization a lot of people don't have, is they're going to learn one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. And it's like the generations that I see now coming up through the school systems. And when I say school systems, I mean K through 12. These generations of children think, oh, well, my TV's broke, I'll just go buy a new one. Or my washer's broke, I'll just go buy a new one. My car's broke, I'll just go buy a new one. Well, they're going to learn, especially with inflation the way that it's going, if it keeps going like it is, that they're going to have to learn how to fix things. You know, if your washing machine's broke, you learn how to fix it instead of throwing it away and going and buying a new one.
Guys, I think I'm gonna call it a night. I'm tired.
All right,
You
Joseph.
look tired,
Thanks
brother.
for being here, man. Yeah, he looks tired. Joe works midnights, and so you never know when the sleep monster is going to hit him hard. And all of us that hang out with him socially, of course, we recognize that about Joe. And so there he goes.
But
You okay, Joe? he just
he's like,
made a loud
I'm
noise.
going to bed.
I've
He
worked-
just crashed.
I've-
He just crashed over in here. Yeah.
I've worked midnights the last 2 nights, so I slept till 2
so
o'clock today. I'm wired for sound right now, but you know, it's one of those things that people have to learn, and children have to learn that one direction or another, and it leads to adulthood.
Enjoy the rest of your stream.
Love you, brother. Be good.
You. Good.
So, you know, Blue Bear, I don't know if you know this about Kyle, but Kyle works in the behavioral health industry.
Okay.
And so his work and your work intersect quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Kyle sees on a daily basis bad raisins, as we would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you see it in a way that it's really obvious to you that it was the way they were raised?
Man, I wish that was a clear answer. Often yes, and often no. The crazy thing about the health industry, particularly, you know, behavioral health, is it's such a wide and varying thing. And not to I don't. We're just talking here. So I mean, so you'd be surprised even how many lawyers, doctors, people in law enforcement even come through our doors. I mean, it's just a crazy variety of individuals.
That's why I ask if you saw it in a way that it was kind of obvious to you, because I know a lot of people come through your doors that just made a bad decision and it grabbed them. You know, I mean, I know you see that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So obviously not talking about those, but just, you know, is it sometimes obvious that they were just raised in a way to not understand consequences, or always had their way kind of deal, or always had their parents defend them against authority?
I think we're starting to see more of that. I mean, professionally speaking, which that's what I mean. I'm here for you and for this, not to talk about me or.
Well, I mean, no specifics, just, you know, big generalities.
Well, no, yeah, no. I know that. But just in general, it's yeah, a lot of it does come down to the thing you have to look at is so. I guess I'll talk about in the behavioral health field, substance abuse in general. It's not scientifically or medically hereditary, right? There's nothing to link it. Now, a lot of times you could argue that there's a lot of studies and stuff on that garbage, but so it's not hereditary. Now, that being said, a lot of times it is simply just the way people are raised. So you take a lot of let's use and this is not a jab or you know, anything prejudice or anything of that in that sense, but you look at like bigger cities, for example, like in inner cities where there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of drug activity in general, theft, crime, you know, so on and so forth. The likelihood that someone in that area who is raised in a circumstance with, we'll say, I guess, less profound opportunity or less realized opportunity, you know, they're likely to, you know, and Blue Bear can probably, you know, attest to this, but they're more likely to end up in the system because options that are more readily available to them or seem like they may be the only options to them are what are present. Kind of like we talked earlier in the discussion about kids replicate what they see, right? They're creatures of habit, you know. So a kid sees a parent who does this and does that. Well, they're more likely to do this or do that versus the opposite. It's a rarity that they find it in themselves to do something different than what they're used to doing or what they're used to seeing, or something that's unknown to them until they venture out into the world, maybe college or whatever. So a lot of times, yeah, you get people that come in. I guess to sum it up and it just in a very general way answer your question. Yes, a lot of the times people that walk through the doors of one of the facilities that I have managed, they have come from either a family or a community of people who have done similar things throughout their life.
Sort of that pattern, that breaking the cycle issue.
Yeah, there's definitely patterns, like I said, and whether or not they're hereditary necessarily, but definitely just in a general manner. Children are they're easily influenced, man. So if they're brought up in an area like that, and when I say children, I even mean young adults, like we talked, frontal lobe development, so on and so forth. So I'm even speaking about young adults. Again, college, late high school years. Kid gets hurt in football. He gets a pain pill prescription from the doctor because his parents took him to the doctor after he, sprained his ankle in football. And then, then he's taking these pills, and then gets hurt again in college, or so on and so forth. There's so many variables, but it's definitely people are creatures of habit, right? I mean, even taking that completely in a different direction. So you and I, Tommy, we're friends. We have similar interests and stuff. I've picked up probably some of maybe some attributes or habits that you have, and vice versa. I mean,
Absolutely vice versa. Yeah.
Just from spending time together. So we're human beings in general are just creatures of habit. We replicate what we see. Whether it's something that appeals to us or something that just feels natural. So bringing it back to the actual topic or whatever. I'm not YouTube lingo.
Don't worry about it. Just talk, man.
I guess what you call it, the headline or the topic or the
the advertised topic. Yeah,
the advertised topic, right? So bringing it back to that, clearly these children, and I touched on this earlier just a little bit, but I think there's different factors that apply to the 6-year-old versus the 10-year-old because, well, the situations were different. They both shot somebody. Sure, that's the same. But the 6-year-old, he's 6 years old, but he managed to obtain a firearm that was supposedly secured in some manner.
Right.
And then took it to a building, even as a child, which was labeled as a gun-free zone with signs posted, even just in a pictorial manner of a gun with a line through it.
Right.
You can't bring these here. And then he discharged that firearm in the classroom at his teacher. I mean, so there's that factor. And then the 10-year-old, as pissed off as he may have been, I can never remember being pissed off enough at my dad where I would have thought that it was okay to point a gun at him. If I so much as raised my voice to my dad, I got a belt to my ass.
Yeah, and not to interrupt you, Travis, but you were talking about the adolescent age. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s. There was 2 twin brothers in North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
That shot and killed their father, shot their mother, and shot their sister. Their actual name is the Balcom twins.
Mm-hmm.
I was an active law enforcement officer in that county at that time. I was standing in dispatch when that call come in.
Wow.
It was my night off, and I was actually working dispatch that night when that happened.
That's not a night off, just to let you know.
Well, I was young and stupid back then.
You weren't on
21.
patrol. I got you. Yeah.
I wasn't working the street, but and here's the thing: those kids and that family actually lived next door to the sheriff. I could tell you a lot about that story. I'm not going to say it publicly, but that kind of goes back to this situation with the 10-year-old of they got told no and they got pissed off and decided that they were going to do this. And they spent time in juvenile detention until they were 18 years old. And I believe they got released. I'm not sure of the entire story because I didn't follow it all the way through to the end. But in that same time frame, I had a 10-year-old little girl that come at me with a knife. She actually had 3 butcher knives in her hands, and she got 6
3?
months of unsupervised probation for assault on a law enforcement officer with a deadly weapon.
Unsupervised.
Unsupervised probation for
Wow.
6 months. Because she had gotten her butt kicked by the girl down the street, so she got a handful of butcher knives and was going to kill her.
Well, I guess
What?
I guess the good thing it was only 3, not 4, right? Because that would have made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. But I roll up. My partner has pepper sprayed this girl, and the mom went after him. And this was before tasers. We didn't have tasers back then. This was the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So I draw down on this girl, and my finger was on the trigger.
Yeah.
I was justified. I was justified in what I was about to do,
Absolutely.
and I didn't do it. I ended up reholstering. She dropped 2 of the knives, so I was like, okay, this girl's only got 1 knife. I've got some training. I think I can take it from her, and we can end this peacefully without somebody getting killed. And that's what happened. And she got unsupervised probation for 6 months, which, in my opinion, I think the justice system is failing society, but that's just my personal opinion. But kids learn by what
that
they
would be
see.
that would be another good show, by the way.
Very
Well, and that may be something we can talk about one day, but, Tyler, let me ask you this. You were talking about law enforcement officers coming in your facilities. How many of those officers are seeking help with PTSD?
I'd say just as many as veterans, man. I have no problem saying this. I do not work for the VA. We do get several people in that I refer to the VA, and that's a whole other topic in and of itself. It's kind of like CPS. I've some good things and some oppositional things to say about that whole process, but a lot of it is primarily we deal with substance abuse.
Okay.
And I will say that it's not a high, it's not a high percentage.
Well, let me rephrase that question, since I know that you deal with substance abuse more than PTSD type incidents.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to first responders and substance abuse, what percentage, and you can ballpark this, I'm not going to hold you to it. What percentage do you see coming in that abuse substances that are due to their job related activities?
Current census, I'd say very low, less than 1% that I can personally say. Again, just to give some insight, my job.
Now, Kyle, you don't deal with cases, do you? You're overall.
I do not. I'm the chief operations officer.
Okay, I'm just talking about in general in your facility, not what you deal with personally, but your people.
Right, and that's all I'm trying to clarify.
Okay.
Is my exposure to their personal details as to why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that I personally review on a daily or even weekly basis.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to get at here, and I don't know what facility you run. I mean, we can talk about that later off air, but I suffer from PTSD.
Yes, sir.
Related to job activities. And I have taken the steps to rectify that situation that has haunted me for over 20 years. I am fortunate enough in my state that we have a post-critical incident seminar that is sponsored by the state government and paid for by the state government for first responders. And I've attended that seminar, and it helped me out tremendously, which I'd already started taking action before that with my, primary care physician. So when I went there, it was just that final step for me to be able to sit down with a group of my peers and talk about the situation and talk with people that are my peers that have been through similar situations and sit down one-on-one with a counselor and have the ability of EMDR. I don't know if you're familiar with that, to help with that situation. Now I'm post probably 3 or 4 years from that seminar. But with veterans and first responders, the traumatic events that we see are numerous times what the general public would see as far as traumatic events. And you and me and Tom can talk about some other situations that just recently happened. I don't want to talk about them on here for the simple fact that it might give up my location. Tom knows kind of where I'm at, but I know you don't, Tyler, but I try to keep that a little bit of an anonymity. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can't say that word right now for some reason, due to my job. I am a active law enforcement agent, and I'm also a supervisor for my agency. So I try to keep that a little bit separated to keep that anonymity, for specific reasons. There's people that like to dox and things of that nature on YouTube. So
They sure do.
Yes, sir.
But if you own a gun store, you and I definitely need to talk.
I will say I no longer own the gun store.
Okay.
That's again, I guess one of those things that I would love to if Tommy is willing to host, bring you in on. There's some history there and stuff. I did own a gun store. I'm not opposed to doing it again, but it's that's in the past, and there's some good times, some bad times to discuss during that. But,
yeah. Are you still doing firearms training or?
Yes. I am a certified firearms instructor. Tommy and I do some stuff within the area that we're in, as well as
I might want to get in on some of that, so we need to talk.
We'd love to have you.
I'm trying to work on some stuff through my state to get my firearms instructor through the state. So
I see you posted something there, Tommy. What'd you do there? If you
that's what me and you do the most of. That's why I threw that up there.
Yep.
We used to, when he owned the gun shop, we did a lot of concealed carry classes. And well, as a matter of fact, I don't remember the exact number anymore, but over about a 7-year period, I did, I don't know. Well, for 2 years solid, when I was the director of training at Bear Arms here locally, I did a concealed carry class every single Saturday for 2 years straight, except the Saturday closest to Christmas. So I did 51 a year for 2 years, and 5 years of that 7-year stretch, I did one a month. So I've done a lot of concealed carry. So I did that, and then through Buckeye Farms, we had a show about school safety, school guns in schools. So something I deal with and research quite a bit is guns in schools, gun violence in schools, etc. So Faster Saves Lives, we train for school districts to arm staff, and everyone says teachers. And I'll be straight through the Faster program. I've got it's percentage wise, it's less teachers and it's more janitors, principals, assistant principals that are armed than it is teachers. Although there are teachers, but everyone says teachers, but it's staff in general. So we train staff. What's that?
Faculty in general.
Yeah,
Well, and
faculty
here-
in general. So faster.
And Tom, here's my
that's the
thing.
majority.
Here's-
The majority of training that me and Kyle do together now is through the FASTER program. He works with me when I teach the precursor class that staff has to go through before they're allowed to attend the 3-day class. So me and him do the 1-day class quite often with FASTER or through the FASTER program, and we get those educators and those staff members ready for the big class. We get them competent enough to go through the 3-day course.
Yeah, and here's my thing. Your janitors and other staff are going to see a threat before any of the teachers do.
Whenever we have a janitor, I always or a maintenance guy, I take them, I find a moment aside a little bit, and I always tell them, I'm like, listen, you're the what we call in the Army, the S2 or the G2. You're the intelligence gatherer, because good or bad, however you want to look at it, you're the kind of person that the British used to call invisible people. So the servants that would be in the nobility level, the aristocracy level, the people that clean and cook and do all the stuff, the upper class would just talk around them as if they didn't exist. And that's the way kids are with the janitor and the maintenance guy. They'll say things, do things, behave in ways around maintenance, janitors, and maybe even the lunch lady types that they wouldn't around a teacher. So you're the intelligence gatherer. We tell them that all the time. And then we usually let them know that there's 2 roles when it comes to an armed staff member. There's the ambusher and the hunter. Now, those aren't nice terms, but for sake of letting people know what their role is in this, we tell that, if you're a maintenance guy or a janitor or a lunch lady, odds are you don't have kids, a specific group of kids you're responsible for. So your job is to be a hunter. If you know there's an armed person in the school wreaking some version of havoc, your job is to go confront them. If you're a teacher and you have a classroom, you're an ambusher. You secure those kids and you do the necessary steps we talk about, and you go through the options of the thought process that we teach them, and you secure your kids. And now maybe you've got another teacher nearby you can have come watch your kids, and you could go be a hunter. But so we divide them into that. So yeah, we definitely talk about how the janitors and the maintenance guys and the lunch ladies and the bus drivers and the principals, the assistant principals, you don't have kids, you're the hunter. And I think that's generally why we have more of the other staff other than the teachers come to our classes, because they know if something goes down, they're going to be the ones going out and confronting the bad guy or whatever the case may be.
And here's the thing. When you're a teacher or an educator, your focus is on the children. When you're a faculty member, your focus is on your job, and you're going to notice something out of place. That janitor is going to notice, this guy doesn't seem like he belongs here.
Right.
That cafeteria worker is going to say, I've never seen that person in here before.
Yep.
I've never served them lunch.
Right. Because they see everybody.
Yeah, they're the ones that are going to notice somebody that is out of place while the teachers are educating the children, because their focus is on the children.
Right.
So, it's like, and I don't want to refer to the movie, but if you've ever watched American Sniper, when the dad is talking to Chris and his brother and says they're sheep and they're sheep dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the sheep dogs. We protect,
right?
The ones that need protected.
Yep.
Somebody will look at me and they'll say, "Oh, you're a protector." I'll be like, "No, I'm a sheepdog." And they go, "What do you mean you're a sheepdog?" I protect the ones who can't protect themselves. I protect the sheep. And that's kind of where I go with my job.
And for anyone that's not heard that metaphor before, the bad guy is the wolf.
Yeah, the bad guy is the wolf.
That's the metaphor.
And I'm the sheepdog that protects the flock.
Right.
It's not my job. I have no duty by law to protect anyone. By my job.
The Supreme Court said so, Damon.
Yeah. you know, and people will be like, "What do you mean?" And I have to explain to them, you know, this is my job is to respond or to be proactive. And I am fortunate enough that I can be proactive in what I do because we don't have a huge call volume. Now, when you have a huge call volume, you're going to be reactive instead of proactive. But I am fortunate enough in my area to be proactive. And that's why we are one of the safest cities in our state. Because we are a small city, we are able to be proactive versus reactive due to our call volume. But to go back, you highlighted Kelly's comment of EMDR can be used in public without anyone knowing it. And that is absolutely 100% correct.
Now, tell me once again, help me out here. That EMDR, what actually that's the counseling that you said you went through a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I have to look up the acronym.
Yeah, it's not that important. But I just want to make sure I knew
eye
what we were
movement
talking about.
desensitization and reprocessing therapy. So basically, in a nutshell, what that helps you do, say you have a traumatic event. This program that I went through, what it does is you go into a big group and then smaller groups and then a one-on-one. So with this program, a traumatic event is a file in your brain that your brain cannot file away, and you relive that traumatic event over and over and over and over again. So what this does is it helps you file that traumatic event away in the proper place. So to kind of break that down, when I had this traumatic event 20 years ago, before I went to this class, I could see everything. I could smell everything. I could taste everything. I could recall every single detail of that event. Once I went through this training, my brain was able to file that traumatic event away in my file system in my brain. So now when I think of this situation, I actually have to sit back and think of this situation, but I can no longer see or taste or smell those specific events of that day. It's kind of like I have to sit and think about it now versus reliving it.
If I may, Blue Bear,
Sure.
to try to, I guess, layman's terms as far as Tommy's understanding, because he's a literature guy. So based on what you just said, I'm going to try to just, please correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, Tommy, what he's saying is, in my understanding, it's taken a legal-sized document, trying to stuff it in a letter-sized folder into a letter-sized filing cabinet. It doesn't fit, so it's always on your desk. What you have to do is compartmentalize that to somehow fit it into a letter-sized folder so that you can put it in that filing cabinet in a letter-sized folder. It's always there, but let
me see if I can dumb it down to someone like me who's not in that community, not experiencing those specific issues. It's putting things in their proper perspective, as opposed to letting them overwhelm out of their. Instead of letting them affect things in a way that isn't.
It's kind of here's the way I can put it to you. It's like trying to put 50 rounds in a 30-round mag.
Very well put.
Okay, that works too. That works too. Yeah,
What
I get both metaphors. Yeah.
what it does is it reduces that 50 rounds to 30 rounds to fit in that mag.
Okay. Okay.
And simpler gun
so the
terms.
process is teaching you how to do that though.
Yeah.
EDMR or MDR, whatever it is.
The EMDR, which I didn't actually do. They said I didn't qualify for it. But the whole process of this program, being able to speak to peers and relate to those peers, helped me take that 50 rounds and put it into 2 mags versus trying to stuff it all into one.
Which is manageable. Yes, sir.
So basically what I did is I took that 50 rounds, put 30 rounds in one mag, put 20 rounds in another mag, and was able to fit all that in to where it was useful. If that makes sense to you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I believe that. I mean, it's the general concept. Yeah, sure. Okay.
It's taking things that are problematic and unmanageable, making them manageable, but they're still there.
Yeah, it's still there. I
Okay.
mean, I could still recite the whole situation to you, but when I do, my breathing stays normal, my blood pressure stays normal.
Okay.
I'm able to discuss that situation without you being able to see the trauma of that event.
Let me ask you guys a question, specifically because I got people here that have dealt with it. We got Kelly in here who deals with it professionally as my guess as to what I'm reading her comments, as well as you, Kyle. So I know that even if I'm right, I know this is extremely simplified. So, I get that part. But one of the definitions I read about PTSD generally that made sense to me, all of a sudden it clicked to me what we're talking about, was I read a statement that said PTSD is the inability to separate the memory from the emotions of it.
Correct.
And so what you're accomplishing there is finding a way to learn how to separate the two. It's still a memory, but now you're not living the moment when you're in the memory.
Correct. It's
okay,
not
cool.
It's
I
not
thought that was
creating
a good definition or understanding.
it's not
Okay,
creating that rise in blood pressure, rise in respiration rate, rise in heart rate, creating
cool.
the anxiety and the emotion of reliving that incident.
So,
all right.
Again, anyone feel free to correct me if they believe I'm incorrect or describing it incorrectly. But yeah, no, Tommy, you hit the, I guess, Larry County version, hit the nail on the head. So the idea behind the therapeutic value for PTSD or anything similar, as far as clinically speaking, the memory's there, man. We're human beings, so there will always be memories of events, just like there's good and there's bad memories. The idea is the traumatic experience itself. It's separating memory from experience. So it's rather than reliving, which is essentially what PTSD is. It's any event that may, basically trigger that response in the brain, emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever that response may be for the individual, typically all three, to basically be reoccurring. It's a separation in those that just it allows it to be a memory versus basically a reliving, a current.
It's a memory versus an emotional response.
Correct. Thank you, Blue Bear. Yeah.
That's
the idea.
And Tom, did you see any active duty?
In your military? I got out 8 weeks before I got out 8 weeks 9/11. So yeah, all 5 years were active duty, but it was before 9/11. So I was never in combat though.
Okay, so you're not a combat veteran.
Okay. I'm a Cold Warrior.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I still appreciate every bit of service that you did.
No. I'm very proud of it. It's just so no, check this out. I tell this almost as a joke, but because it's kind of funny, but it's also just the truth. I went in about 18 months after we invaded Grenada. I got out literally about 2 weeks before my unit was invaded Panama. And then I was out for 4 years, and I went back in during Desert Storm. But as we all know, that only lasted, a few hours, literally, the combat part of it.
Yeah.
And then I think 100 hours technically. And then I got out 8 weeks before 9/11. I literally, nobody could have planned to miss everything like I did. It's just the way it happened. And then, yeah, and I mean, as a guy in the military, you don't want to miss it all, but I did. And I mean, it's good, bad. We could talk about that for hours about destiny and karma and God knows what else we could throw in that mix. But in any case, I didn't deal with any of those. And so I always end that story with a semi joke. And I would say, I did go to Haiti and we took away both their guns and that was over.
I love that story, by the way.
It's all true too, except for the 2 guns.
I can speak from the first responder side because I cut my teeth and I started doing this when I was 15 years old as a explorer on a rescue squad.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My first call was a double fatality.
Holy moly.
So, I was the youngest certified emergency medical technician in my state at the time for about 6 months when I got it. I was still in high school. I was going to high school and going to community college to get my emergency medical technician when I started.
I've actually met a kid similar to what you're describing up in Northern Ohio. So yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Here's what's funny. When you said something earlier, you and I have actually met. You just don't realize it. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right.
When you were talking about somebody who you used to work for, you and I have actually met.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about that
almost
later.
Did. Gotcha. Okay.
But you and I have actually met before. You just don't realize it. And once we talk privately, you'll understand and you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realize that was you.
Okay, cool.
But when you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be first responder related. Sure. It doesn't have to be military related. It can be a simple event in your life. As a regular citizen. Now, regular citizens don't see it as often as first responders or military do because of the simple fact that we have those highs and lows. Like if you're active duty military and you're in a war zone, you're going to see those highs and lows. If you're a first responder, whether it be EMT, firefighter, paramedic, police officer, you're going to see those highs and lows. It's just like Chad talks about all the time. We can be sitting around doing nothing and get that call and we get that adrenaline dump. And then we have to go back to saving a kid. And then we get that adrenaline dump. And then we go back to saving a kid. Then we get that adrenaline dump. It's highs and lows in our job multiple times a shift to where it creates that post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of people use that and say, oh, I got PTSD. Come work with me for 6 months. Let me show you what PTSD really is. When you're doing those adrenaline dumps 6 times a night versus 6 times a year.
Or 6 times a lifetime.
Or 6 times a lifetime. And the same thing with dispatchers.
Right. No,
a lot of people don't give dispatchers credit where they need it. Because as an officer, I only deal with what's in my area. Dispatchers deal with what's in the entire county. Multiple times a day. And multiple times a shift. So you know, dispatchers are the forgotten people. They're the forgotten ones that you speak to in the dark, or what we say is the forgotten voices in the dark, because those are the first people that you speak
To
to.
me, when I thought about just in my own head, I'm just thinking about the potential stresses of dispatching, because I actually got asked to apply for a dispatcher's job once, and so anyway, I was thinking about it, how you deal with that with no way to deal with it. So I got the call. I'm talking to the actual people, and I can't go respond. I can't help. I have no way to physically feel the ability to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of
To me,
people,
that's kind of mind blowing.
a lot of people dismiss dispatchers because they think they're secretaries. And I've been one. I did it for over 3 years before I got back into law enforcement.
Right. Right.
I've delivered babies over the phone. I've heard people take their last breath. I've administered telephone CPR.
You didn't conceive any children over the phone, did you?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't been called to court yet for child support. So. But I actually did deliver a premature baby.
Had to interject.
I did actually deliver a premature baby over the phone, which was pretty cool, because when they got to the hospital called me and asked me what the time of birth was. And I had to go back and look at my documentation and say, okay, the time of birth was this time.
Wow.
And the baby was premature and is actually doing very well at this time. So I have my wings for delivering a baby over the phone. My stork in. So it was kind of cool because it was cold. It was probably about this time of year. And the dad was freaking out, and I'm like, you know, women have been doing this for thousands of years. Let nature take its course. And I was updating the paramedics as they were coming to them, and it was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I would guess so.
You know, it was one of those things of, you just gave life over the phone. Usually when we're dealing with bad things, it was one of those positive things of, you know, you just gave life over the phone, or created life over the phone, or delivered life over the phone.
Good for you, man. Yeah, and I know when you deal in a profession. I mean, Kyle does. When I was in the Army, I did legal work, so I was kind of like a paralegal. It's really not a great analogy, but I was kind of like a paralegal. So I work for the prosecution, right? And so Kyle, you and me, our jobs, at least when I was in the Army, at least, you deal with the negative all the time. So if you got an Article 15, if you got punished, if you went to a court martial, if you got kicked out of the Army, I did all that. It was all negatives. So the few times I was able to do a positive really sticks out. So it sounds like to me like that's one of your times, Blue Bears, when you were able to do a serious, no negatives at all, just a really positive thing.
Yeah, and that's what drives people to do that job.
Right.
And you can tell when someone is genuine in what they're doing, because you take the good with the bad, but when the good comes, you celebrate it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like with kind of what you do when kids graduate high school. You celebrate it.
Sure.
Or with Kyle, when somebody completes their steps and changes their life, you celebrate it. So, you know, there's those celebrations, but there's also those step back. You know, you have to look at, like with a dispatcher's job or a police officer's job, they don't call us when they're having a great day. You know, 9 times
think-
out of
yeah,
10,
okay.
it's when they're having the worst day of their life. So,
Right.
and one thing that I've tried to do over the years is, you know, like in my area, we respond to all fire, EMS, and police calls for service in our city. So there was a situation that I had a med call, and this gentleman and I had some differences in the past, and his wife was having a medical emergency. I put those differences aside for the simple fact of I was there for his wife to help her in her time of need, in his time of need. And unfortunately, she passed away a couple of days later. And when I asked him how she was doing, and he told me that she had passed, I got out of my car, walked down to him, put my hand in his, told him I was sorry for his loss, and that if he needed anything, please reach out to me. Even
Yeah,
though he had,
well,
even though he had cussed me out 2 weeks prior.
Well, it's you know, it's. I mean, it's a phenomenon that we've seen recently with DeMar. I forgot his last name, collapsing on the field during football. As soon as something like that happens, we you know, the differences, and if it's like easy in a human's mind, a normal human's mind, to weigh okay, this is serious, this isn't, and you immediately separate the meaningless stuff of life to the real stuff of life. So all of a sudden, guy collapses on the field right in front of everyone. What a lot of people thought was a death right there in front of them at the moment, and immediately football teams, rules, professions, even in terms of football players, it just all melts away. And to me,
And
that
the
just
only-
tells me that you're just a normal human with ethics, and you understand the important stuff of life versus the stuff that isn't as important.
And the only thing that bothered me about that whole situation, Tom, is they all wanted, and when I say all, the news outlets,
Yeah.
all they wanted to talk about
Yep.
was that professional athlete. What about the
Yep.
people that saved his life that are making $10 an hour or $15
there's
an
that
hour?
too. My
You know-
uncle Danny, which I don't think you were here when he shuffled behind me, going back to his place in the house here. Excuse me. He's a colorful character, let me tell you. One of these days, I'm thinking I'm gonna bring him on the show or whatever if he consents and he wants to. But he's one of the most unique humans I've ever met. However, in his heyday, in his youth, before certain health issues hit him, he was a paramedic in the city of Tampa for over 20 years, and he would do overtime with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so, yeah, when I saw them out on the field doing that, like you just mentioned. Now he made a little more than $10 an hour most of his career, at least, but probably in the beginning it was probably like that. But you're right; it's just somebody sitting there I mean, how many football games, high school all the way through NFL, do paramedics sit there collecting, overtime pay? And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but they're collecting their pay, just do it, and we're here in case, and nothing ever happens. And all of a sudden, those people were called into action in a way that almost, well, as far as the NFL goes, hasn't happened since I believe 1971, from what I read, and still did a great job. And he got discharged from the hospital yesterday. So if it wasn't for what they did right there on that field, that wouldn't have happened. Those results wouldn't have happened. And you're right.
My point is that athlete makes millions of dollars a year on a contract. The people that saved his life make $50,000-$60,000 a year on average. I'm not sure what NFL.
I think you're referencing the value system we have as a society, what we put our money into and what we don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
and this is a relation that I do. I practice more law than an attorney.
I get that. Sure.
What is the starting salary for a first-year attorney?
That's an
100
insanely, yeah. I mean, that's a
150,000 a year.
gigantic- Corporate, absolutely. Yeah,
Say 100,000 a year.
sure.
I make 40.
Right.
But I practice
Right.
more law than they do as a first-year attorney,
Ah, no doubt there. Yeah.
and I deal with a lot more bullshit than they do. So
You probably
You know,
don't. You probably don't have to carry as much coffee as they do either.
I drink a lot of coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. Yeah, like Lisa says, did y'all see that with what happened to him, his chance of survival was 25%. If resuscitated in 3 minutes, it drops if it takes longer. So if those paramedics that were making, say, 15, 20 bucks an hour weren't there, he would have been dead.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
So Lisa, since you mentioned it, does anybody know? I don't think it's been officially told yet whether or not it was, what do they call it, commotio cordis? I don't think we know that yet, or they haven't released that information, if they ever will. Where he was struck just right in the rhythm of his heart to stop the.
I mean, and that's
that was the most common
freak things that ever happened.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm also a CPR instructor. I'm a taser instructor, and hopefully soon to be a firearms instructor. But there's a lot of things that I want to say unsung heroes. The unsung heroes are people that dedicate their lives to saving others without the pay scale of, say, a doctor or a lawyer. If that makes sense.
Well, the problem is, I mean, from an economic standpoint, you're being paid by taxes. Attorneys are paid for supply and demand. that's the gigantic divide in terms of economics.
That's the gigantic difference.
Yeah.
If
you were hired as a private bodyguard to do what you already do, your pay would be substantially higher. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I get it.
I'm open to those
values.
contracts. Trust me.
I bet you not too many people in the area in which you are could probably afford that. But
if somebody wants to hire me as a private bodyguard, I'm definitely up for that. So, because that will quadruple my salary.
Oh, wait a minute here. We got a nice little bit of trivia here. Her uncle was FBI and played Prince, bribing Congress members in Afghanistan. Holy moly. That's kind of crazy. That's back when the FBI did some real work, I think.
Yeah.
I guess most of them still do. It's the leadership of the FBI that's so messed up.
Here's the thing. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this the other day. Matter of fact, last night. During the Obama administration, the FBI was told not to prosecute anything. And then during the Trump administration, the floodgates opened.
Mm-hmm.
So those guys were, making 170 grand a year during the Obama administration, doing absolutely
Not
nothing,
doing much at all.
Riding around watching TV because they couldn't prosecute anything.
Right.
Right.
And
it's kind of like one of those.
Here, go ahead.
No, it's just one of those things that when you tie somebody's hands behind their back and don't let them prosecute anybody, It's giving free reign to the criminals.
Every single time. It's very predictable. Yeah. We've got a local FBI agent here where I'm at. Really crazy. Kyle knows him well, but I think he's got a really unique story, but he's not from here, not from this area that I'm in, Larry County and the surrounding environs at all. Him and his wife are from Atlanta, and he was an Atlanta cop, then an FBI agent, and is either just retired or is about to any given day now, if I remember right. But him and when he was getting on his retirement period in the FBI, he had the ability to sort of pick his office he wanted to work out of. And they did research online, him and his wife, who's also a professional. And they found out that in terms of good use of your money, this is one of the better areas to live in America. So if you've lived somewhere else and you've made a really healthy pension that you're prepared for, the amount of buying power that pension will give you becomes greater here and a few other places in America.
Yeah.
So he did.
Honey.
Right. I know, it's crazy. So, because I told him when I first met him, I'm like, dude, nobody moves to here. People leave here. What are you doing? And he explained to me that in his research, he found out as far as his buying power with his money, it would be better to retire here than almost anywhere in the country. So they did some real estate searches, and I won't mention which house he bought here because anybody local would recognize this name of whose house he bought. But he bought a really nice estate, so to speak, here locally. And him and his wife, he's now working. The last assignment I knew he had is he would have to work through the week he was, I want to say in charge of, but he was really high up in the NICS background check system the FBI runs. So he would drive to, I forget where, Morgantown. I think it's near Morgantown where the NICS background checks section that physically happens. And he was in charge of a higher level of running that system. And then he would come back here, obviously, for the weekends because he's ready to retire any given month. But anyways, so when all of this FBI corruption, he kept saying, it's the leadership. It's not the agents. It's the leadership. It's not the, and I would always tell him, dude, I know, I get it. But I mean, that's just part of being in a corrupt organization where the leadership's corrupt is everybody's going to feel a stink. Everybody's going to get some of it on them. But great guy, absolutely great guy, liberty loving, Constitution following, good guy. However, from Atlanta, he's a Georgia fan. So I've heard from him a lot lately with the Ohio State Georgia game. And he liked throwing a lot of stuff out at me early before the game. But then after the game, he was like, dude, that was the national championship game. And I think the nation knows that now. So anyways, back to my fandom there. But football on FBI with a buddy there that lives locally. But I just think that's a crazy bit of trivia that this is according to his research, as someone that had no family, just did research on the internet and said, that's a great place to buy real estate and retire. And so here him and his wife are, and he became a decent friend of me and Kyle. And I may talk after retirement. I may get him on the show here, YouTube channel. I won't mention it at this point until I talk. Yeah, but he's got a YouTube channel. He does some cool stuff. Not at all what we're doing here. Nothing related to this at all. Doesn't talk law enforcement or politics or history or nothing. But really good guy and does some cool stuff on YouTube. So, anyways, gentlemen, it's almost 3 hours, and I have a feeling we could probably do another hour. But I'll be honest, I don't really want to. So what time is it? It's after midnight. Holy moly! We got what is it? Lisa is out in Nevada. Nevada.
You're a dark 30 here, bub.
It's 0 dark 30. So Blue Bear, dude, I really appreciate you coming on. You added a crap ton of stuff that intersected early, and then we went off into ways that Lisa and Kelly had some connection to, it seemed, and Kyle as well. And I learned some stuff. So I call that a very good success. Good grief. I was reading and talking at the same time, and that didn't work out well. So, but thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. So what was your live stream about, by the way?
We just kind of went over a couple videos and talking about what's going on with the channel for the next couple months. I'm working.
So what?
a bunch
Go
of
ahead and tell us
overtime,
for me and Kyle and the 4 people hanging in. So what's up with your channel in the future?
Right now I'm working about 20 hours of overtime a week. So I'm going to try to do what I can with content and live streams over the next couple of months. So it's going to be sporadic for a little bit, but I'm going to try to do my best between work and family and all that good stuff. So I'm going to try to get out at least one video a week.
Okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
So
60 hours a
passed
week
the 3-hour
is
mark.
a lot of
anyone
fun.
still here? I bet. So anybody that's still here, thank you very much. And hopefully I'll get a little more regular. Just trying to get in the habit of doing this thing and learning the tech and figuring out my tech issues. And so tonight helped a little bit. I learned it's way worse than I thought even. So Kelly, try to stay dry. Lisa, thanks for being here. And anybody else is still here, because I don't know who it is exactly that's still on. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kyle and Blue Bear. And we are going off live